Chapter 55:43. Lin Feng's speed was as fast as lightning, mainly because the Sky Domain Sage King's aura was too terrifying. This time, he was acting with Nziru. Lin Feng felt that both he and Nziru's acting was not bad, and they should not have exposed themselves. Therefore, Lin Feng did not need to worry about Nziru's safety. He should be worried about himself. The direction he was escaping towards was the Demon Emperor Ridge, where the Emperor Brush was. It would be best if he could shake off the Sky Domain Sage King, but if he couldn't, the Sky Domain Sage King would be able to enter the Demon Emperor Ridge, to be able to lure Sky Region Saint Kings into the Demon Emperor's Ridge. It was said that the Demon Emperor's Ridge was an extremely dangerous place. If he could lure the Sky Domain Sage King into the Demon Emperor Ridge, he might be able to find a way to deal with the Sky Domain Sage King. Lin Feng's wishful thinking was extremely good, but Lin Feng miscalculated one thing. He did not expect the Sky Domain Sage King's speed to be so fast, even though Lin Feng was the first to escape. However, the Sky Domain Sage King still caught up to him. The Sky Domain Sage King looked at Lin Feng with a cold smile and said, "I have traversed Kunlun and the 9 continents cosmos, but I have never suffered a loss. A small cultivator like you actually dares to steal my things. How laughable! Even the Heavenly Emperor might not dare to steal my things. When I catch you later, I will definitely tear you to pieces." Lin Feng said, "Isn't it just a Kunlun immortal crystal and a bottle of Spring of Life? Just 2 items, and you are so angry. You are really ignorant. How can someone like you have the nerve to say that you have traversed 2 cosmos? How can your skin be so thick?" After hearing Lin Feng's mocking words, the Sky Domain Sage King became furious. The Sky Domain Saint King couldn't help but get angry. He said coldly, "It's easy for you to say that. Do you know how precious the Spring of Life and Kunlun immortal crystals are? What's more, I'm not chasing you because of those 2 items. I'm chasing you because you challenged my authority, so you deserve to die." As his voice fell, the Sky Region Saint King's speed became even faster. Seeing the Sky Region Saint King closing in on him, Lin Feng's face became extremely gloomy. Not only was this guy strong, even his speed was so fast. He was truly abnormal. No wonder he was a creature from an even more powerful universe. Lin Feng felt that if they were of the same level, the 8th level of the 9 States Universe Saint Realm would be much weaker than this Sky Region Saint King. Lin Feng had always been extremely confident in his intuition, so this time Lin Feng felt that there wouldn't be any problems. Being targeted by such a terrifying existence was indeed a troublesome matter. 6 hours later, Lin Feng could already see the Demon Emperor's Ridge. But at this time, the Sky Region Saint Kings had already caught up to him. The Sky Region Saint King's body emitted an extremely terrifying aura. The Sky Region Saint King began to condense his attacks to deal with Lin Feng. There were only 100 or 200 meters between them. At such a close distance, the Sky Region Saint King's attacks could cause an extremely powerful killing power. The Sky Region Saint King sent a palm strike towards Lin Feng. A huge energy palm print condensed in the void. That huge energy palm print directly attacked Lin Feng. Lin Feng took out his Dominator's armor and Phoenix shield. The 2 defensive magic treasures were activated by Lin Feng. But even so, Lin Feng was still sent flying. Damn. Lin Feng couldn't help but cry out gloomily. The Sky Region Saint King was truly abnormal. His strength was simply too terrifying. What was even more terrifying was that the Sky Region Saint King passed through the void and arrived in front of Lin Feng. He once again sent out a palm strike towards Lin Feng. Feeling the terrifying attack from the Sky Region Saint King, Lin Feng's expression changed. He still used the Phoenix shield and Dominator's armor to block the attack. Bang! Following the fierce collision, the Sky Region Saint King's terrifying palm strike landed on the Phoenix Shield. A portion of the power was absorbed by the Phoenix Shield. A portion of the power was absorbed by the Dominator's armor. A portion of the power was blocked by Lin Feng. What made Lin Feng's expression ugly was that after taking 2 attacks, the Phoenix Shield and Dominator's armor actually dimmed. The power was greatly reduced. The Dominator's armor directly retracted back into Lin Feng's body. Lin Feng knew that this was because the Sky Region Saint King's attack was too terrifying. That was why the Dominator's armor and Phoenix Shield were damaged. This level of treasure could completely repair itself, but it needed time. Lin Feng also put away the Phoenix Shield. "Brat, die." The Sky Region Saint King coldly looked at Lin Feng. His eyes flashed with dense killing intent. That terrifying palm strike once again flew towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng took out the mysterious iron box. Then he opened it. The mysterious iron box only revealed a small gap. Lin Feng didn't dare to open it too much, because if he opened it too much, the mysterious iron box would attack indiscriminately. At that time, Lin Feng would bear the brunt of the attack. The enemy hadn't been killed yet. Lin Feng was killed first. Of course, even if he only opened a small gap, the attack released by the mysterious iron box was terrifying enough. It could be described as destroying heaven and earth. Shwa, a blood-red light flew out of the mysterious iron box and swept towards the Sky Region Saint King. The Sky Region Saint King's expression suddenly changed. He quickly blocked the blood-red light. The Sky Region Saint King collided with the blood-red light from the mysterious iron box. The Sky Region Saint King was sent flying, but the blood-red light also dissipated. Lin Feng couldn't help but gasp. The Sky Region Saint King had actually blocked the mysterious iron box's attack. This bastard was too abnormal. The mysterious iron box is actually with you. The Sky Region Saint King obviously knew about the mysterious iron box. His face was full of shock. "You also know about the mysterious iron box?" Lin Feng looked at the Sky Region Saint King in surprise. Of course. The Sky Region Saint King looked at the mysterious iron box with a look of surprise. He said, "Brat, if you give me the mysterious iron box, I can spare your life." "Hee, how ridiculous. Do you think I will believe you?" Lin Feng sneered. The Sky Region Saint King looked at Lin Feng mockingly and said, "Brat, you don't know how terrifying the mysterious iron box is. If you knew, you wouldn't have kept it." "Of course I know." Lin Feng sneered and said, "It contains Yimo's body. Since you came from the Kunlun universe, you should know about the Yi family of the Kunlun universe, right?" The Sky Region Saint King said, "Of course I know about the Yi family of the Kunlun universe, but you don't know enough about the mysterious iron box. Yimo's body has long been swapped." "What? You're saying that the body inside isn't Yimo's?" Lin Feng's face suddenly changed. Chapter 5544. When he went to the Supreme God Court, he had seen many things in the Lake of Reality. Lin Feng had thought that everything in the Lake of Reality was real, but after hearing what the Saint King said, Lin Feng started to have doubts. For example, the body parts in the metal box weren't Yimo's, but Lin Feng had seen Yimo's body parts in the metal box. Could it be that the Sky Region's Saint King was right? The corpse inside the mysterious iron box. Was it really not Yimo's? Was it someone else's? Who could replace the dismembered corpse inside the mysterious iron box? Everything seemed so confusing. Of course, the Heaven Domain Divine King might not be telling the truth. Lin Feng sneered at the Heaven Domain Divine King. "Do you think I'll believe you?" The Heaven Domain Divine King sneered. "When you said that, your inner world already believed what you said. You're saying that the body inside the box isn't Yimo's. Then who is it? Lin Feng asked. The Heaven Domain Divine King said, I don't dare to say, and even if I dare to say, I'm not sure. That's just my guess, but one thing I'm sure of is that the body isn't Yi Mo's. How can you be sure of that? Lin Feng asked in confusion. Because Yi Mo came back from his divine damnation. The Heaven Domain Divine King said, King came from the Kunlun universe to the Nine States universe because I was hunted by Yi Mo. Lin Feng, the Heaven Domain Divine King, said coldly, Kid, give it to me. You have no other choice. No. Lin Feng's mouth twitched. Immediately after, he turned around and flew towards the bestial Imperial Mountain. Since you want to die, I'll grant it. The Heaven Domain Divine King said coldly and chased after Lin Feng again. The Heaven Domain Divine King was indeed a huge problem, mainly because he was too hard to deal with. Lin Feng could try to open the box wider, but Lin Feng was worried that he would suffer unimaginable damage. This was really frustrating, so he might as well run. The Heaven Domain Divine King sneered. There are always some people who know there's no hope of escaping, but still try to run. I don't know what these people are thinking. Lin Feng sneered. Don't get too cocky. It's not certain who will win. Ha! An ant like you, it's not confidence, it's arrogance. No, it's not arrogance, it's stupidity. The Heaven Domain Divine King sneered. Lin Feng, you're a homeless dog. You have the face to be this cocky. If I've cultivated as long as you have, do you believe it or not, I can crush you. It's easier than crushing an ant. Hee kid, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue when you talk big? The Heaven Domain Divine King sneered. He was not angry at Lin Feng's provocation. After all, he had lived for countless years. How could he be angry because of a few words? Unless it was a loss of face. But a few words would not be enough to make him lose face. Lin Feng did not say anything else and continued to fly into the distance. The most important thing now was to get rid of the Heaven Domain Divine King. This guy was too terrifying. If he did not get rid of him quickly, it would be troublesome if he was caught. Finally, Lin Feng arrived at the outer region of the Demon Emperor Ridge. There were many people looking at the Demon Emperor Ridge. Ordinary people naturally did not dare to enter the Demon Emperor Ridge because it was too dangerous. What was the difference between going in and dying? After seeing Lin Feng and the Heaven Domain Divine King, many people could not help but point at them. Lin Feng was the first to enter the Demon Emperor Ridge, followed by the Heaven Domain Divine King. Inside the Demon Emperor Ridge, there were many restrictions. They were very powerful and emitted a gloomy and terrifying aura. Those powerful deployment spells didn't pose a threat to Lin Feng. Lin Feng activated the Stone Scripture. When the Stone Scripture was activated, Lin Feng could instantly control the various killing arrays and restrictions here. Countless killing arrays and all kinds of restrictions. They were all activated. Those terrifying killing arrays and restrictions released extremely terrifying attacks, all of which were aimed at the Heaven Domain Divine King. It's useless. These attacks can deal with ordinary Sage Realm cultivators, but they are far from enough to deal with me. The Heaven Domain Divine King sneered. Under the attacks of all kinds of killing formations and restrictions, he quickly passed through them. So many attacks did not hurt this guy at all. The Heaven Domain Divine King was not bragging. Lin Feng's expression was gloomy as he rushed towards the depths. The Heaven Domain Divine King quickly chased after him. The two sides were getting closer and closer. The situation was not good. What should he do? How about should he summon all those undead creatures and fight to the death with this guy? Just as Lin Feng had this thought, Lin Feng suddenly felt a violent fluctuation coming from the depths. After feeling the violent fluctuation, Lin Feng was very shocked. He increased his speed and rushed towards the depths. In the blink of an eye, he had already reached the depths. After arriving here, Lin Feng discovered that it was an abyss. The violent fluctuation was emitted from the abyss. What was in the abyss? Lin Feng was puzzled. He did not think too much and quickly flew into the abyss. After entering the abyss, Lin Feng felt that the abyss was not simple. He saw that there were incomparably thick chains in the abyss. Looking carefully, those chains were actually the chains of law. The densely packed chains of law extended from below. He did not know what was down there. Lin Feng increased his speed. After an hour, he finally saw what was down there. In the abyss, there was a giant brush that was at least 1,000 meters long. It was locked down by the chains of law. Emperor Brush. Lin Feng was sure that this giant brush was the legendary Emperor Brush. Chapter 5545. The Emperor Brush had finally appeared. Lin Feng didn't expect the Emperor Brush to be locked in this place. He didn't know who had locked the Emperor Brush here. Many years had passed. Many things were destined to be forgotten. A terrifying aura came from above. The sage kings from the sky region were chasing after him. "Are you here?" Suddenly, a deep voice sounded. This voice seemed to have transcended time and space. This was the voice of the Emperor Brush. After hearing the voice of the Emperor Brush, Lin Feng's spirit was lifted. Could it be that the Emperor Brush had become a weapon cultivator? As the supreme treasure of the sage emperor of the human race. After being forged by 9 generations of emperors, the Emperor Brush was definitely a terrifying supreme treasure. Therefore, the Emperor Brush had become a weapon cultivator. This was very normal. "I'm here to save you, Senior," Lin Feng said. "Ha ha ha ha, great. I've been waiting for this day." Loud laughter could be heard. Whoosh. Whoosh, whoosh. But at this moment, something terrifying happened. The chains of law started to shake violently. These chains of law were extremely terrifying. They could shake out a terrifying power that could destroy heaven and earth. The chains of law whipped towards Lin Feng. These chains of law wanted to stop Lin Feng from getting close to the Emperor Brush. Lin Feng quickly dodged the chains of law's attack. However, he didn't manage to dodge completely. A chain of law whipped Lin Feng and sent Lin Feng flying. Lin Feng's face turned pale. The chains of law's attack was too powerful. He didn't know who had condensed the chains of law. It was terrifying. When Lin Feng was sent flying, the chains of law whipped towards Lin Feng again. This time, it seemed like they wanted to take Lin Feng's life. Seeing so many chains of law whipping towards him, Lin Feng quickly used the heaven patching technique. He borrowed another chance from the heavens. Whoosh! There was a flash of light. Lin Feng disappeared without a trace. The chains of law lashed at the air. Lin Feng passed through the blockade of the chains of law. He quickly arrived in front of the Emperor Brush. "Let me borrow your godly blood." A voice came from within the Emperor Brush. It was probably the voice of the Emperor Brush god. Lin Feng nodded. His right hand moved like a knife and directly cut open the palm of his left hand. Blood flowed out. Lin Feng's left hand pressed on the Emperor Brush. Traces of blood seeped into the Emperor Brush. Countless runes appeared on the Emperor Brush, as though it had consumed an immortal elixir. The interior of the Emperor Brush vibrated with terrifying waves of energy. That fluctuation was simply too terrifying. It was simply shocking. Anyone who felt that fluctuation would feel their heart tremble. However, the Emperor Brush was full of goodwill towards Lin Feng, so Lin Feng didn't feel uncomfortable. The Emperor Brush struggled violently. The chains seemed to have come to life in an instant as they wrapped themselves around the Emperor Brush. They wanted to lock the Emperor Brush completely. However, now that the Emperor Brush's power had begun to recover, the chains couldn't bind it anymore. The emperor brush struggled even more. Crack, crack. The chains began to break. Lin Feng's eyes lit up when he saw the chains break. The emperor brush was about to break free. The emperor brush struggled even more. Crack, crack. A large number of chains broke apart. Finally, all the chains that were binding the emperor brush were shattered. The emperor brush was finally free. Good heavens! Isn't this the legendary sacred object of the human race, the emperor brush? It is said that the emperor brush has been refined by 9 generations of human emperors and has transformed into an incredible treasure. This treasure carries the supreme fate of the human race. If I can refine the emperor brush, then I will inherit the supreme fate of the human race. In that case, who can compete with me? The Sky Region Sage King couldn't help but be excited when he saw the emperor brush. This guy was actually spying on the emperor brush. How audacious! He quickly flew towards the emperor brush. He wanted to suppress the emperor brush. However, the emperor brush moved at this moment. The emperor brush wrote the word destroy in the void. It was the word Tao. The word Tao, written by the emperor brush, wasn't an ordinary word. The word Tao, written by the emperor brush, contained the will of the 9 generations of human emperors. At the same time, it carried the supreme fate of the human race. Therefore, the word Tao, written by the emperor brush, was extremely terrifying. When the word destroy was written, the word destroy flew towards the Sky Region Sage King. Break! The Sky Region Sage King shouted coldly as he threw a punch. Bam! Along with the sound of a violent collision, the word destroy shattered. However, the Sky Region Sage King was also sent flying. The Sky Region Sage King's fist was shattered. Fresh blood immediately flowed out. His entire arm was trembling violently. How terrifying! Lin Feng couldn't help but gasp. Lin Feng really didn't expect the emperor brush to be so powerful. The Sky Region Sage King was at the 8th level of the Sage Realm. Yet, he wasn't a match for the emperor brush. However, Lin Feng immediately understood. The emperor brush, it could be said to be the most powerful treasure of the human race in this era. It was comparable to an ancient weapon. It wasn't surprising that the emperor brush was able to display such combat power. In addition, the supreme fate that the emperor brush carried was as boundless as the sea. Therefore, it was understandable that the emperor brush was powerful. It was normal for the emperor brush to be so powerful. If the emperor brush wasn't powerful, Lin Feng would find it strange. Oh no, this brush is too cruel. Let's go. The Sky Region Sage King also knew that he was in trouble. This guy knew that he was no match for the emperor brush, so he turned around and wanted to escape. However, the emperor brush didn't give the Sky Region Sage King a chance to escape. When the Sky Region Sage King was escaping, the emperor brush displayed its power again. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. After a few strokes, the emperor brush wrote another word. After this word was written, a large amount of death aura filled the air. This word, it was actually the word die. The word die, written by the emperor brush, flew towards the Sky Region Sage King. Break, break, break. The Sky Region Sage King roared and continuously used more than 10 mystiques to block the word die written by the emperor brush. However, the Sky Region Sage King failed. The word die, written by the emperor brush, was too terrifying. It directly shattered the Sky Region Sage King's mystiques and imprinted on his body. Bam! Following a violent explosion, the Sky Region Sage King's body exploded. Please remember the domain name of this book. Chapter 5546. F***CK. The Sky Region Holy King's Origin Source. This is good stuff. Lin Feng couldn't help but exclaim. He rushed over and collected the Sky Region Holy King's origin source. This was the origin source of an 8th Heaven Sage realm cultivator. It was simply too precious. The increase in cultivation level was unimaginable. In addition to the Kunlun immortal crystal that Lin Feng had obtained previously, Lin Feng thought, if he could refine all of these things, he might be able to break through to the Tao immortal realm. Thinking about that, Lin Feng couldn't help but feel excited. Swoosh! There was a flash of light. The Emperor brush turned into a middle-aged man. This middle-aged man had an extraordinary aura, and his aura was deep and powerful. He wore a long robe made of stars. Lin Feng cupped his fists and said, "Congratulations on breaking free, Senior." "Ha ha ha ha." The Emperor brush laughed and said, "I have to thank you for helping me break free this time." "You're welcome, Senior," Lin Feng said. The Emperor brush asked, "What's your name?" "I'm Lin Feng, Lin Qi's descendant." The Emperor brush asked. It was normal for an existence like the Emperor brush to be able to sense his bloodline, so Lin Feng wasn't surprised. Lin Feng nodded and said, "Yes, I'm Lin Qi's descendant." The Emperor brush sighed. "Lin Qi really has a successor." Lin Feng said, "Senior, you're so powerful. Who trapped you here?" The Emperor brush said, "It's the Sky Demon Emperor." Lin Feng was surprised because the Celestial Bestial Emperor had lived a long time before the 9th Human Emperor. In other words, the Sky Demon Emperor had died many years ago during the 9th Emperor's era. Lin Feng was extremely puzzled when the Emperor brush said that the Sky Demon Emperor had trapped him. Lin Feng said, "Didn't the Sky Demon Emperor die a long time ago? How did it trap you, Senior?" The Emperor brush said, "The Heavenly Demon Emperor is the most cunning person I've ever met. He's not dead." Not dead? Lin Feng's eyes widened. This wasn't a good thing, because the Heavenly Demon Emperor's only son had been killed by him. The Heavenly Demon Emperor was not dead yet. Would this guy come looking for trouble with him? The grudge of his son's death was absolutely irreconcilable. Lin Feng's expression couldn't help but become extremely unsightly. The Emperor brush naturally noticed the change in Lin Feng's expression. It asked, "Your expression is somewhat unsightly when the Heavenly Demon Emperor is still alive. Could it be that you have some grudge with him?" Lin Feng replied, "I killed the Heavenly Demon Emperor's son." The Emperor brush was stunned when it heard Lin Feng's words. Then he smiled wryly and said, "Little boy, you're really strong. You even killed the Celestial Demon Emperor's son. The Celestial Demon Emperor only has one son. If the Celestial Demon Emperor knows about this, he'll be furious." Lin Feng asked curiously, "Where did the Heavenly Demon Emperor go?" The Emperor brush replied, "I'm not too sure, but I think he went to look for a way to surpass the Saint Layer. Back then, he trapped me here because he wanted to absorb my qi. I have the qi of the human clan. The Celestial Bestial Emperor wanted to use my qi to break through, but he discovered that the qi of the human clan and the Celestial Bestial strength of the Celestial Bestial strength conflicted. So he gave up." Lin Feng said, "After such a long time, did he really find a way to break through? If that's the case, we're in trouble." After saying that, Lin Feng couldn't help but frown. Right now, he was too depressed. If the Heavenly Demon Emperor really broke through to the Saint Layer, wouldn't he be done for? Thinking about that, Lin Feng wanted to cry, but no tears came out. It's not that easy to surpass the Saint Layer, so you don't have to worry too much. Who knows, maybe he's already dead in some corner. The Emperor brush said. The Emperor brush had a good attitude, but Lin Feng didn't have such a good attitude. The Heavenly Demon Emperor, the threat he posed to Lin Feng, was too great. He had to be on guard against him. "Senior, since you know my ancestor Lin Qi, do you know where he is?" asked Lin Chi. Lin Feng couldn't help but ask. He had always felt that Lin Chi wasn't dead. Lin Chi had only disappeared back then. His clansmen suspected that he had passed away, but who knew if he was still alive? Back then, your ancestor went to do something big. He told the sixth emperor that if he succeeded, he would live. If he failed, he would die. The Emperor Brush said, if he succeeded, he would live. If he failed, he would die. Lin Feng muttered these words. What did ancestor Lin Chi do? Why did he leave behind these words? Lin Feng couldn't help but feel puzzled. But it didn't matter what Lin Chi did. That matter was definitely incomparably dangerous. Did he succeed? Lin Feng was in a bad mood. If he had succeeded, he should have appeared long ago. But his ancestor didn't appear. Was it because he had failed? We'll do our best and leave the rest to fate. Perhaps we'll meet again one day, the Emperor Brush said. Lin Feng felt that the Emperor Brush was implying something. Senior, do you know something? Lin Feng looked at the Emperor Brush and asked. The Emperor Brush said, don't ask. You'll know when the time is right. Lin Feng nodded. Senior, what do you plan to do next? Lin Feng asked. I'm going to do something extremely important, the Emperor Brush said. Lin Feng said, how about you go to the Sin Realm as a guest after that? Of course, the Emperor Brush said. Lin Feng didn't need to say certain things. He believed that the Emperor Brush would be able to guess it. Lin Feng was very happy to hear the Emperor Brush's answer. He hoped that the Emperor Brush would be able to complete the task as soon as possible so that it could head to the Sin Realm. If the Emperor Brush was around, Lin Feng wouldn't be afraid even if he had to fight a huge battle with the Heavenly Court. Rumble. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. What's going on? Could it be an earthquake? Lin Feng asked. Let's go out and take a look, the Emperor Brush said. Lin Feng nodded and flew out with the Emperor Brush. They arrived outside. Then he saw that the sky was actually cracking. Countless cracks appeared on the ground. The undying world seemed to be heading towards destruction. This situation was too terrifying. It was as if the world was coming to an end. It was Lin Feng's first time seeing such a situation. Lin Feng said in a trembling voice, is the New Age about to be destroyed? Please remember the domain name of this book. Chapter 55:47. The Emperor Brush continued, the undying world is about to be destroyed, not the epic. What do you mean? Lin Feng asked curiously. Someone is devouring the world source of the undying world. If the world source of the undying world is completely devoured, the undying world will definitely fall apart. The Emperor Brush explained. Lin Feng's expression changed abruptly. Who was devouring the world source of the undying world? How could they do such a wicked thing? If the undying world was destroyed, how many people would die? Lin Feng had been in the undying world for so many years, but he had only been to a few places. Why did he go to so few places? It was because the undying world was too big. It would take a few hundred years to go around it. How could Lin Feng have so much time to wander around the undying world? The undying world was so huge. One could imagine how many creatures there were in the undying world. Tiandi, it must be Tiandi. Lin Feng said. He felt that Tiandi might be devouring the world source of the undying world. However, Lin Feng soon felt that it might not be Tiandi. After all, Tiandi was the ruler of the undying world. He had been in charge of the undying world for so long. There was no need for him to destroy the undying world. Moreover, Lin Feng remembered that Tiandi had merged with the undying world. Therefore, Tiandi could borrow the power of the undying world to fight against his enemies. It was unimaginable how terrifying Tiandi was now. Logically, Tiandi wouldn't destroy the undying world. Of course, nothing was absolute. Who knew what Tiandi would do? Maybe it really is Tiandi. The Emperor Brush said. He kept frowning. No one knew what he was thinking. Let's part here. I have to go and take a look. If I can stop it, I will. Of course, you don't have to worry for now. Even if the world source of the undying world is completely devoured, it won't be a problem to hold on for 100 or 200 years. The Emperor Brush said. 100 or 200 years. Hearing that, Lin Feng heaved a sigh of relief. If they could persevere for so many years, they could move a portion of the people away. But the Sin domain was so huge, and 90% of the people were destined to be buried here. This was something that could not be helped. But if they left the undying realm, where would they go? It was so dangerous outside. Lin Feng began to curse the bastard who wanted to destroy the undying world. Which bastard was doing this kind of thing? Be careful that you don't give birth to a son who doesn't have an anus. What a bastard. The Emperor Brush left. He hoped that the Emperor Brush would be able to stop this from happening. Lin Feng was no longer in the mood to cultivate. He was observing the situation in the undying world. If the undying world was still being destroyed, he would consider returning to the Sin realm, and then organize everyone to escape from the undying world. This was the worst-case scenario. Perhaps, at this very moment, all the cultivators of the undying realm were paying close attention to this matter. They were also praying. In the following 3 months, the undying world continued to move towards destruction. The cracks in the sky were getting bigger and bigger, and the cracks in the earth were getting bigger and bigger. 3 months later, everything returned to normal. The crack in the void stopped expanding, and the crack in the earth stopped expanding as well. It's calmed down. Will the undying world be destroyed? That should be the case. I wonder what happened. The undying world has been preserved. We don't have to die. Lin Feng was in Bestial Imperial City. He saw countless people celebrating. The Demon Lord said, "What's the big deal? If the era is destroyed, nobody will be able to stop it. The undying world, the 10,000 worlds, and even the 3 highest worlds will be destroyed in a very short time. That's a real disaster. You won't even have a chance to escape. Even if you escape to the outside world, you won't be able to escape death because the outside world will also be destroyed." Lin Feng's heart was heavy. The undying world was going to be destroyed. It was already despairing enough, let alone the entire universe. That's why we have to kill the mastermind. If we kill them, we can stop the era from being destroyed. Lin Feng said, "You're right, but it's easier said than done to kill those people." The Demon Lord sighed. "There's still some hope." Lin Feng said. Lin Feng decided to go into seclusion. He couldn't wait to break through and increase his strength. Lin Feng didn't want to wait any longer. However, the others were still in a state of shock. Lin Feng left Bestial Imperial City. He entered a mountain forest. A large part of the forest had collapsed. There were huge cracks everywhere. The space-time crack in the sky hadn't closed either. This was an extremely terrifying situation, even though the undying realm was not destroyed. The undying world wasn't destroyed, but what had happened before had caused great damage to it. Lin Feng felt helpless. He couldn't stop it. Lin Feng found a secluded place in the forest and started his seclusion. Lin Feng first refined the original strength of Tian Region's Holy King. No wonder he was a cultivator of the 8th celestial layer. The source energy was unimaginably terrifying. After refining the Sky Region Sage King's source energy, Lin Feng's cultivation began to improve by leaps and bounds. Lin Feng was originally at the 7th stage of the virtual immortal realm. Soon, he broke through to the 8th stage of the virtual immortal realm. Then, he reached the 9th stage of the virtual immortal realm. the 10th stage of the virtual immortal realm. Finally, he reached the peak of the 10th stage of the virtual immortal realm. Even at the peak of the 10th stage of the virtual immortal realm, the Sky Region Sage King's source energy had only been consumed by 60%. There was still 40% of the source energy left. Lin Feng was shocked. It was so difficult for him to increase his cultivation, and the consumption was so great. However, the Sky Region Sage King still had so much source energy left. The source energy of the Sky Region Sage King was extraordinary. The remaining 40% could be used together with the Kunlun Immortal Crystal. This could help Lin Feng break through to the Tao Immortal Realm. Lin Feng didn't immediately break through to the Tao Immortal Realm. He rested for 10 days. Then, Lin Feng went into seclusion again. This time, Lin Feng swallowed the Kunlun Immortal Crystal. After Lin Feng swallowed the Kunlun Immortal Crystal, Lin Feng began to break through to the Tao Immortal Realm. The tribulation light flickered between his brows. Lin Feng had indeed attracted the lightning tribulation. With the energy of the Kunlun Immortal Crystal and 40% of the Sky Region Sage King's source energy, Lin Feng was confident in breaking through to the Tao Immortal Realm. Bolts of incomparably thick thunderbolts blasted over. In the next 5 months, Lin Feng began to undergo the tribulation. Lin Feng didn't know how many bolts of lightning tribulation others would undergo when breaking through, but when he broke through to the Tao Immortal Realm, he actually underwent more than 2 million bolts of lightning tribulation. This really made Lin Feng extremely depressed. Fortunately, Lin Feng successfully passed all the lightning tribulations and successfully broke through to the Tao Immortal Realm. Chapter 55-48. Cultivation. First celestial layer of Tao Immortal. Soul. First celestial layer of Great Saint. Body. Peak of Great Saint. Lin Feng was very satisfied after checking his condition. This time, it wasn't only a breakthrough in his cultivation, but also in his soul and body. In addition, Lin Feng discovered that his own Tao had also made a breakthrough. Lin Feng's Tao of the Sovereign had also broken through from minor success to great success. This was a very important breakthrough. Throughout history, the Tao of the Strongest was extremely tyrannical. Lin Feng's Tao belonged to the highest level, crushing all Taoists. However, if he wanted to increase the power of his Tao of the Sovereign to the peak, he first needed to raise his Tao. After breaking through from minor success to great success, Lin Feng's battle prowess had at least doubled. I need to find a place to recuperate. Lin Feng quickly left the place of tribulation. Although he had succeeded, his physical condition wasn't particularly ideal. His injuries were quite serious. Lin Feng needed to heal his injuries as soon as possible. At the same time, he needed to familiarize himself with the power of the new Tao of the Sovereign. 1 month later, Lin Feng came out of seclusion. Lin Feng was in seclusion. 1 month in the outside world was actually 1 year in the time and space. Lin Feng's harvest was great. Then, Lin Feng returned to Demon Imperial City. Currently, Demon Imperial City was still in a state of panic. Although countless people were talking about the Battle of Extinction, many people felt that the Battle of Extinction was very far away from them. However, some time ago, the undying world was almost destroyed. This kind of situation was nothing compared to the Battle of Extinction at the end of the epic. Therefore, many people were really panicking. All kinds of news began to spread. Lin Feng heard 3 versions of the news about the undying world being almost destroyed. In the first version, after Heaven Emperor fused with the undying world, he suddenly discovered that if he devoured the world origin of the undying world, he might be able to complete a complete transformation. Therefore, Heaven Emperor planned to devour the world origin of the undying world. The price was that the undying world would be destroyed and countless people would die miserably. However, Heaven Emperor didn't care about this at all. Every man for himself, especially at the end of the epic. In order to control more power, Heaven Emperor decided to gamble on this opportunity. In the second version, many top experts from other worlds, including foreign creatures, wasteland experts, experts from the 3 paramount realms, and other places, after hearing that Heaven Emperor had fused with the undying world, they set their sights on the world origin of the undying world. Because after Heaven Emperor fused with the undying world, the world origin of the undying world had undergone a great upheaval. As a half-supreme realm, the undying world's world origin wasn't something that cultivators could pry into. However, after Heaven Emperor fused with the undying world, the world origin of the undying world leaked out. Therefore, those top experts came to the undying world one after another to snatch the world origin of the undying world. Those foreign experts naturally didn't care about the life and death of the undying world's cultivators. To put it bluntly, the destruction of the undying world and the deaths of countless people had nothing to do with them. It had nothing to do with them at all. It would be strange if they cared. In the third version, Heaven Emperor, foreign experts, they were all prying into the world origin of the undying world. The celestial Arch had wanted to take all the spoils for himself, and the foreign experts naturally wanted a piece of the pie as well. Therefore, both sides fought. As for why the undying world wasn't destroyed, it was said that a few extremely powerful and mysterious cultivators appeared and stopped Heaven Emperor and those foreign experts. In the end, Heaven Emperor and the foreign experts gave up on devouring the world origin of the undying world. All the experts sealed the world origin of the undying world. It was extremely unrealistic for others to want to devour the world origin of the undying world. Although the undying world was preserved, about 60 to 70% of the world origin had been devoured. Now, only a portion of the world origin was left. If there was enough world origin, the undying world could still repair itself. Now that a large amount of world origin was missing, it was impossible for the undying world to repair itself in a short period of time. Only after the undying world produced a large amount of world origin would it be possible for the undying world to repair itself. And it seemed that there weren't many years before the end of the era and the Doomsday Battle. It was conceivable that before the end of the era and the Doomsday Battle arrived, the undying world would probably have no possibility of repairing itself. The current undying world was extremely dangerous. There were space-time cracks everywhere, and huge cracks in the ground. In fact, many ancient cities were affected when the undying world was almost destroyed the last time. Those ancient cities were destroyed one after another. Many people were cursing these top experts, but what was the use of this? Those top experts didn't care about other people's curses. Lin Feng sighed. This world was too cruel, and 9% of people were destined to die in these catastrophes. Now, Lin Feng only wanted to increase his cultivation as soon as possible. Only by increasing his cultivation could he deal with all kinds of situations. Otherwise, in the end, not to mention protecting his loved ones, family, friends, and subordinates, even he might die in these catastrophes. Lin Feng inquired about the Panga's secret dimension. To Lin Feng's surprise, he really did find some information. There was a piece of news that said that an illusory world had appeared in the East Sea of Deathly Silence. That illusory world was faintly discernible, and no one knew if it would really appear. No one could prove that it was the Panga's secret dimension, but it was still a relatively important clue. After Lin Feng returned, he used the 8 trigrams technique to deduce. This trip is extremely dangerous. Lin Feng glanced at the divination and couldn't help but frown. Actually, Lin Feng wasn't very good at using the 8 trigrams, but even if he wasn't very good at it, he could still predict good and bad things. If he went to that place, it would be a bad omen. That wasn't a good sign. Lin Feng divined several times, and each time it was extremely dangerous. Let's go and take a look. Lin Feng couldn't help but murmur to himself. He quickly flew towards the deathly silence. Big Yellow, the god in the mirror of the future, said, "If it's an extremely dangerous divination, why do you still want to go there?" Lin Feng said, "An extremely dangerous divination means that I'm likely to encounter a calamity there. Huang Fuqin Tian is the first successor of Pangu. If he can obtain Panga's orthodoxy, then he might be able to threaten me. That's why I have to stop him. If he really obtains Panga's orthodoxy, then it'll be an extremely terrifying matter." Please remember the domain name of this book, Chapter 5549. The Deathly Silent Sea region was an extremely dangerous region. It was said that a great battle had taken place in the Deathly Silent Sea region. Originally, there was a top force in the Deathly Silent Sea region called the Dead Soul Island. The Dead Soul Island was one of the strongest forces in the Eastern Sea region. Moreover, it was a demonic force. However, it wasn't that bad. There was a reason why so many evil forces were hated so much. First, the cultivators of the demonic forces cultivated extremely vicious and evil techniques. If they wanted to cultivate those techniques, they would need to kill a large number of people as sacrifices. Second, it was for benefits. The Dead Soul scripture cultivated by the Dead Soul Island didn't require the sacrifice of living people. Therefore, their sect didn't kill innocent people. Moreover, there were conflicts of interest. The Dead Soul Island controlled a large territory. There were countless precious resources under the sea. They didn't lack any resources at all. They didn't have any conflicts of interest with other forces. However, the Dead Soul Island was still destroyed. It was said that the Dead Soul Island seemed to have obtained something very important. Therefore, many major forces joined forces and destroyed the Dead Soul Island under the pretext of eliminating the demonic forces. The people of the Dead Soul Island died miserably. However, this was the current situation in the world of cultivators. Many times, a groundless crime could cause your family and the force behind you to die without a burial ground. Lin Feng had seen this kind of thing too many times. Perhaps it was because they died too unjustly and miserably. Therefore, before the last batch of higher-ups of the Dead Soul Island were killed, they would turn into dead souls and kill all the cultivators who came to the Dead Souls Sea region. This curse had been passed down until now. Some people believed it, so they avoided the Dead Souls Sea region. However, some people didn't believe in these legends. However, regardless of whether they believed in these legends or not, there was one thing that was hard to refute. The Dead Soul Sea region was indeed very dangerous, especially at night. It was said that many dead souls would wander out. Late at night, the ancient starship Xianyuan was floating above the sea. The weather was getting colder. A chill assaulted the body. Gray mist filled the air above the sea. If the king of hell wants you to die at midnight, he won't let you live until midnight. An eerie voice echoed above the sea. Not long after, many ancient ships of the dead drifted over from the distance. Too many people had died tragically at sea. In the end, they turned into undead spirits and boarded the ancient undead spirit ship, drifting towards hell. Lin Feng remembered that when he was sailing on the sea, he had been deceived by the wicked Taoist priest. At that time, immeasurable Taoist had lied to him and said that he had died, causing him to be sad for a long time. In fact, immeasurable Taoist had gotten himself the identity of a netherworld emissary. However, his identity as the underworld's emissary had already been stripped away by the underworld. Lin Feng's identity as a netherworld emissary was also stripped away. However, Lin Feng managed to snatch a token from another netherworld emissary. He was still a netherworld emissary, but he was just pretending to be one. Humans walk the human path. Ghosts walk the ghost path. Humans and ghosts walk different paths. Since you've trespassed on the ghost path, I'll capture your soul on behalf of King Yama. A sinister voice rang out. An endless amount of ghost chi immediately surrounded Lin Feng's Xianyuan ancient starry skyship. Acting all mysterious, a puny, netherworld emissary dares to be so arrogant in front of me? Lin Feng opened his eyes and pointed in front of him. An immortal light flew out and hit the ghost chi that was flying towards him. Bang! That ghost chi. It directly exploded. Then a cultivator fell out of the ghost chi. Great Immortal, please spare me. Great Immortal, please spare me. The cultivator was shocked. He knew that he had kicked an iron plate. He quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Lin Feng, begging for mercy. Ha, now you know how to beg for mercy? Don't you think it's too late? Lin Feng sneered. Great Immortal, please be magnanimous and forgive this lowly one. This lowly one is willing to serve Great Immortal as his master. The cultivator begged. Someone like you wants to be my servant? You think you're qualified? Forget it. I don't want to kill anyone today, so I'll spare your life. However, you have to answer a few questions of mine. Lin Feng said, Yes, as long as this lowly one knows something, I won't dare to hide anything from Great Immortal. The cultivator hurriedly said. Lin Feng asked, What's the situation in the underworld now? Previously, only the first layer of the underworld was open. Now, all 32 layers of the underworld have been opened. Many terrifying existences that were sealed inside have come out. The underworld is in chaos now. Those terrifying existences are forming factions, fighting for territory, fighting for luck, and fighting for opportunities. They want to strengthen themselves as much as possible before the Armageddon War arrives. What about the underworld? Lin Feng asked. The underworld is now the strongest group because 2 emperors of hell and a few kings of hell have returned to the underworld after breaking the seal, said Lin Feng. The cultivator said, So you're saying that you're sending these souls to the underworld? Lin Feng asked. Yes. The cultivator hurriedly said. Good. You may leave now. Lin Feng said. Yes, yes, yes. Many thanks to Great Immortal for sparing my life. The cultivator thanked Great Immortal profusely and didn't dare to stay any longer. He hurriedly left. Lin Feng remained seated cross-legged and closed his eyes. 5 days later, the ancient starship Xianyuan finally arrived at the periphery of the illusory world. When they arrived, Lin Feng's primitive immortal sutra actually started circulating on its own. This surprised Lin Feng. Immediately, Lin Feng's face lit up with joy. If the primitive immortal sutra started circulating on its own, didn't that mean this was really the Pangu arcane dimension? He had finally found the Pangu arcane dimension. However, how could he enter the Pangu arcane dimension? Lin Feng couldn't help but frown. Could it be that he had to wait for the Pangu arcane dimension to become a real world before he could enter? If that was the case, how long would he have to wait? Lin Feng walked out of the ancient starship Xianyuan and stored it in the space-time continuum. Then, he flew toward the illusory world. Outside the illusory world, many cultivators were pacing back and forth. I heard that several groups of people have already entered. At that moment, Lin Feng heard an old man speak. The cultivator beside the old man asked, How did those people enter? They all have tokens to enter. The old man said, Damn, we don't have tokens. Doesn't that mean we'll never be able to enter? A cultivator said gloomily, Chapter 55:50. Lin Feng couldn't help but frown. To his surprise, someone had already entered the Pangu mystery domain. Others had entered with Panga's token, and those people might be Panga's successors. It was normal. Huangfu Qingtian wouldn't be the only successor of an existence like Pangu. He would definitely have several successors, and in the end, these successors would compete for Panga's ultimate legacy. Of course, different successors would inherit different things, and the order would definitely be different. For example, Huangfu Qingtian might have obtained an extremely extraordinary legacy, so he was now the first successor of Pangu. The others might be second, third, fourth, and so on. They were all behind Huangfu Qingtian. In theory, Huangfu Qingtian was most likely to obtain Panga's legacies. However, this was only a theoretical possibility. Perhaps someone else would suddenly appear and seize the heaven-defying fortune in order to obtain Panga's legacies. Now, Lin Feng had to find a way to enter the Pangu mystery domain. If he couldn't even enter the Pangu mystery domain, then there was no need to talk about obtaining Panga's legacy. It was simply a daydream. Lin Feng tried to see if he could enter the Pangu mystery domain with the help of the primitive Immortal Sutra, but he didn't gain anything. It seemed that the primitive Immortal Sutra couldn't help him enter the Pangu mystery domain. Not long after, news spread that someone had a token to enter the Pangu mystery domain, but to enter, one had to prepare 100 million high-grade immortal stones. This wasn't a world where time had reversed. Even in a world where time had reversed, 100 million high-grade immortal stones was a sky-high price, let alone in the undying realm. After this news spread, it caused a great uproar. Someone tried to lower the price, and the other party finally set the price at 30 million high-grade immortal stones. And the quota was limited. 3 days later, the person with the token would appear and lead a group of people to the Pangu mystery domain. After learning this news, Lin Feng was very happy. If the other party could really bring them into the Pangu mystery domain, 30 million high-grade immortal stones was nothing to Lin Feng. It was just a drop in the ocean. Next, he just had to wait. More and more people came to the Pangu mystery domain. Perhaps the Pangu mystery domain won't appear and will always be in this illusory state. Only a few fated people can enter it, and the others are destined to have no chance to enter. They can only look at it and sigh. An old cultivator's words. Yes, I have to admit, this is really quite depressing matter. Someone said, many people's discussions about the mystery domain, but that night, something terrible happened. In the outer region, more than 10 cultivators' bodies disappeared, leaving only their clothes floating on the surface of the sea. Their companions' companions. All he did was turn his head. When he turned back to chat with them, their companion was already dead. This kind of thing was too strange, so it instantly aroused the vigilance of countless people. At first, some people thought that the other party was playing a prank, but after careful inquiry, they realized that all of this was true, and it was not a prank by the other party. This was too terrifying, and it made people tremble. Many people were watching, including Lin Feng. He saw a dozen clothes floating on the surface of the sea. It was really strange. Where did they go? Why did they disappear in an instant? Only their clothes were left. What did this mean? Lin Feng couldn't help but stroke his chin. He really didn't find anything special. These people's deaths were really strange. Curse. It must be a curse. Someone shouted in horror. Is it the curse of the island of the dead souls? Someone asked in a trembling voice. Yes, it's the curse of the island of the dead souls. Someone else replied. The cultivators who dared to enter the deathly silent sea naturally didn't believe in the legends about the island of the dead souls. However, what was happening in front of them was too strange. No one could explain what was happening in front of them. So, Sometimes they had to believe in some things even if they didn't want to. For example, what was happening before their eyes. It doesn't feel like a curse. Lin Feng said, "Why do you say that?" Someone asked Lin Feng, "Can you feel the power of the curse?" Lin Feng said. Everyone shook their heads. Lin Feng continued, "Even if the power of the curse dissipates very quickly, it's impossible that we can't feel it, right?" "Yes, what this little brother said makes sense." Someone said, "That's right." Many people needed to find a way to vent their emotions. Lin Feng's words comforted them. Actually, the main reason was that the curse was too terrifying. They didn't want to believe that it was the power of the curse. This meant that they would also be attacked by the power of the curse. That was an extremely terrifying thing. At that moment, an old man said, "There's a powerful magnetic field around the Pangu's secret dimension that can block a cultivator's perception of many powers. The power of the curse is strange to begin with, coupled with the magnetic field. Even if the curse is really causing trouble, it might be able to deceive everyone." Hearing the old man's words, Lin Feng couldn't help but frown slightly. Lin Feng had considered this before. When he heard the old man's words, he didn't refute it. However, Lin Feng had a vague feeling that it wasn't the curse that was causing trouble. Lin Feng had always been extremely confident in his feelings. However, Lin Feng didn't say anything else. Even if he explained, the others might not necessarily believe him. "Let's run," a cultivator said in a trembling voice. A cultivator said with a trembling voice, unwilling to stay here any longer. "Let's leave immediately," another cultivator said. Thus, some cultivators who didn't want to stay here any longer decided to leave. "It's night. It's not good to fly over the sea." Someone reminded them. "It's better than staying here," someone else said. The others didn't say anything else. The others did not say anything else. Tens of cultivators banded together and flew into the distance, wanting to leave this place. However, they only flew for a few dozen miles before they stopped. What's going on? Many people were puzzled. Even though it was night time, they could still see what was going on more than 10 miles away. After all, the cultivators who came here were very strong, and their night vision was extremely shocking. The bodies of the dozens of cultivators suddenly became extremely stiff. Then they let out shrill screams. A moment later, something terrifying happened. Those people's bodies actually melted in an instant. In the end, everyone's bodies melted away. Only their clothes were left floating on the surface of the sea. Chapter 55-51. Dead. They're all dead. Curse. It's a curse. I told you it was a curse. Do you believe me now? It's all because of the curse. So miserable. They died so miserably. Not even their corpses are left. Only their clothes are left. We're not going to die here, are we? I don't want to die. Many people cried out in horror. No one wanted to die. But now, they were all scared to death. The unknown was the scariest, and everything that was happening in front of them was unknown. Many people were trembling in fear, and their faces were as pale as paper. But sometimes one had to face these things head-on. There was no escape. The more one wanted to escape, the worse the situation would be. "Let's go and take a look," a cultivator said. Many people flew towards the dead cultivators. Lin Feng was also in the crowd. They had arrived at the sea. After searching carefully, they didn't find anything special. Lin Feng tried to sense the power of the curse, but it was the same as before. He still couldn't find the power of the curse. These cultivators had died in front of everyone. No one had any clue as to the cause of their deaths. Everything was so strange. Could it really be a curse? Lin Feng couldn't help but doubt himself. "What should we do?" a cultivator said with a pale face. They were in despair. The situation in front of them was a huge torture for many people. Ah! Another cultivator cried out wretchedly. Everyone turned to look and saw that a cultivator had died miserably. His body had melted away, leaving only his clothes behind. The clothes floated on the surface of the ocean. It was the same as the cultivators who had died earlier. It was really strange. What was going on? At that moment, Lin Feng suddenly heard a special sound. It was like the sound of wings flapping, but he didn't see anything. Ah, ah, ah. Miserable screams rang out one after another as cultivators died tragically. It's over. It's really over. The curse is working. Many people cried out in despair, as if they were about to go crazy. At this time, Lin Feng took out the heavenly flame because the sound of flapping wings had alerted Lin Feng. When the heavenly fire enveloped Lin Feng discovered something astonishing. It seemed like something was rushing towards him, but it was blocked by the heavenly flames. Could it be that it was that thing that had killed so many cultivators? If that was the case, the deaths of those cultivators had nothing to do with the curse. Thinking of this, Lin Feng tried to use his eye of origin to observe what the existence hidden in the void was. However, what made Lin Feng extremely depressed was that his eye of origin was actually unable to see those strange creatures clearly. This was something that made Lin Feng extremely surprised. Many cultivators were still dying, but no one could stop those strange existences. At this time, a veiled female cultivator flew over from afar. The veiled female cultivator was dressed in black, and her figure was quite hot and enchanting. Because her face was covered, no one could see her face, and no one knew what she looked like. However, just by looking at her figure, one could tell that the veiled female cultivator was definitely a top-grade beauty. The veiled female cultivator took out a mirror. She held the mirror in her hand, and a dazzling light shone from the mirror, enveloping all the cultivators. Then, everyone saw that there were actually many transparent insects in the void. Those insects had wings, and no one knew what kind of insects they were. After seeing those insects, everyone's hearts couldn't help but tremble slightly. No wonder no one could discover anything. It turned out that the culprit was these transparent insects. It's not the curse. It's these damned insects that killed so many people. A cultivator said fiercely, after the insects were illuminated by the light of the female cultivator's mirror, they couldn't move. The female cultivator took out a spatial porcelain bottle and put all the insects away. The rest of the people heaved a sigh of relief. The feeling of surviving a disaster was really great. After the female cultivator put away the mirror and the spatial porcelain bottle, she quickly flew towards the Pangu arcane dimension. From the beginning to the end, she didn't say a single word. The female cultivator took out a token. The token was very special, and it emitted the light of primal chaos. The light of primal chaos enveloped the female cultivator. Then, the female cultivator flew towards the interior of the Pangu arcane dimension. She actually flew into the interior of the Pangu arcane dimension. Was that token just now the token? Someone asked, his eyes full of envy. However, everyone could only be envious. 3 days passed very quickly. An old cultivator arrived. The old cultivator had a token that allowed one to enter the Pangu arcane dimension. Old Senior, the other tokens are in the hands of the young cultivators. Why is this token in the hands of the Old Senior? It doesn't seem to make sense. Panga's successor shouldn't be such an old cultivator, right? It can't be a fake, right? A cultivator asked, raising his doubts. That cultivator's words were very reasonable. Who knew if the old man's token was real or not? If it was a fake token, when the time came, everyone would believe that they had paid the immortal stones. The old man could then take away a large amount of immortal stones and escape. Don't worry, it's definitely real. This old man obtained this token after killing one of Panga's successors. The old man said with a smile. Chapter 55-52. The old man's smile was very kind, but the words he said were too sinister and terrifying. This old man was definitely not a kind person. However, Lin Feng still believed the old man's words. He had a feeling that this old man really did have the token to enter the Pangu arcane dimension. Since that was the case, Lin Feng naturally believed him. Lin Feng flew to the old man's side, looked at him, and said, 30 million high-tier immortal stones, right? Yes. The old man nodded. Lin Feng took out 30 million high-tier immortal stones and sealed them away. He handed them over to the old man. You have a good eye. The old man smiled. Lin Feng smiled and said, When do we depart? We depart tomorrow. The old man said. More and more cultivators arrived. Some of them clearly recognized the old man, and they all paid 30 million immortal stones. One day later, a total of 20 people paid 30 million immortal stones. Originally, the old man had wanted to bring 30 cultivators with him to enter the Pangu arcane dimension. However, he didn't manage to achieve his goal. Clearly, the old man was somewhat depressed. However, even if there were only 20 people, he would still be able to earn 600 million high-tier immortal stones. This was an enormous amount of wealth. It was enough to make anyone go crazy with jealousy. The old man said, I'm only in charge of bringing everyone in. I don't care about anything else. As for what you'll obtain, what you'll experience, and so on, it has nothing to do with me. Of course. Everyone nodded. The old man said, Then let's go. As the old man spoke, he took out a flying shuttle. That flying shuttle could roughly hold 30 people. After seeing the flying shuttle, Lin Feng's heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. It seemed that these so-called tokens were all different. The token that the veiled female cultivator had taken out was a token, while the old man's was a flying shuttle. Most likely, the other's tokens were also some strange and bizarre items. After everyone boarded the flying shuttle, the old man activated it. Whoosh! Once the flying shuttle was activated, it flew forward at high speed. The speed of the flying shuttle was very fast, and it flew directly into the illusory world. After entering the illusory world, Lin Feng and the others discovered that the illusory world was completely different from what they saw outside. From the outside, it looked like a large forest. However, after entering, he discovered that he was surrounded by a chaotic world. After seeing this scene, Lin Feng couldn't help but mutter. The Pangu arcane dimension was indeed a little strange. The shuttle stopped. The elder said, We've already entered the Pangu mystic dimension. Everyone can go down now. Everyone flew down from the old man's flying shuttle. After everyone flew down, the flying shuttle quickly flew forward. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. There were only 20 people left. They were also on guard against each other. Whoosh! A middle-aged cultivator was flying towards the depths of the mountain. Soon, they disappeared without a trace. The other cultivators also flew deeper into the forest. Lin Feng chose a direction. Similarly, he flew towards the depths. Soon after, Lin Feng smelled blood in the air. He flew over to check and found that a cultivator had died tragically. The dead cultivator was actually one of the cultivators on the flying shuttle from before. Boom. At the same time, behind Lin Feng, a cultivator stepped out. He punched towards Lin Feng. The other party wanted to take advantage of Lin Feng's unpreparedness. He directly killed Lin Feng. Please remember the domain name of this book. Chapter 55-53. Buzz. In that moment of danger, a huge energy barrier appeared around Lin Feng, protecting him. When the opponent's attack arrived, it directly hit the barrier. Because of that, Lin Feng was completely unharmed. The cultivator quickly retreated. Lin Feng turned around and saw that it was a monk. The monk was wearing a black monk's robe, and there was a black chi swirling around his forehead. He also had a necklace around his neck that was made from a human skull. It seemed that he was an evil monk. Lin Feng sneered when he saw the monk. "Master, you're really strong. If it weren't for my skills, I would have been killed by your attack just now." The demon monk said, "Benefactor, your skills are indeed extraordinary. In that case, this poor monk will spare your life." The moment he finished speaking, the demon monk turned around and prepared to leave. Lin Feng couldn't help but roll his eyes. How could this guy be so thick-skinned? Did he think that he could pretend that nothing had happened after his sneak attack failed? How laughable! Lin Feng had the urge to slap this guy to death. He sneered and said, "Master, don't go. I want to take something from you. I hope you can help me." "What do you want?" The demon monk looked at Lin Feng coldly. Although his sneak attack had failed, he clearly wasn't afraid of Lin Feng. Said Lin Feng indifferently, "I want to kill you, Master. Is that possible?" "That depends on your ability." The demon monk sneered. He put his palms together and quickly chanted an incantation. Behind the demonic monk, a terrifying existence emerged. Half of its body was that of a demon, while the other half was that of a Buddha. Buddha and demon were supposed to be opposites, but now they had appeared in the body of the same person. It was truly unbelievable. Buddha and demon dual cultivators can destroy the world. Suddenly, the demon monk spoke. The terrifying existence behind him stood up and directly rushed towards Lin Feng. The endless Buddhist and evil lights intertwined together, as if they were about to destroy the world. Such a power made people's hair stand on end, and their faces pale with horror. One had to admit that this demonic monk was extremely terrifying. However, Lin Feng was not afraid at all. Lin Feng didn't retreat. He transformed into an yin-yang diagram. That yin-yang diagram seemed to be able to tear the world apart with a light sweep. The yin-yang diagram quickly flew to the side of the half-Buddha, half-demon existence and slashed at him. Puff! With a tearing sound, the half-Buddha, half-demon existence was killed by Lin Feng. The demonic monk's expression suddenly changed. He clearly didn't expect Lin Feng to be such a troublesome character. Endless Buddhist and demonic light lingered on his palm. He then slapped at the yin-yang diagram formed by Lin Feng, intending to resist Lin Feng's attack. But he had failed. The power of the yin-yang diagram formed by Lin Feng was too terrifying. It broke through the demonic monk's divine ability and split his body into two halves. "I actually died just like that. I'm really unwilling." After the demonic monk's voice came out, he was completely dead. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent. He kept the demonic monk's storage ring and flicked his finger. A cluster of heavenly fire flew out and wrapped around the demonic monk's corpse. Then, the heavenly fire burned fiercely. The demonic monk's body was instantly burned to ashes. Lin Feng continued to fly forward. Soon, he passed through the area shrouded in the aura of chaos. What appeared in front of him was a huge world. At a glance, it was boundless. The trees, mountains, rivers, fierce beasts, and so on here seemed to emit an ancient aura from the absolute beginning era. Lin Feng flew quickly in the sky. There must be many opportunities in the forest, but Lin Feng was not interested in ordinary opportunities at all. Only Panga's orthodoxy could arouse Lin Feng's interest. 5 days later, Lin Feng saw an unimaginably huge mountain. That mountain stood between heaven and earth, towering into the clouds. There was no way to know where the mountain peak was. The mountain peak was so huge that it was like a pillar supporting the sky. In front of the mountain peak, there was a 3,000-meter tall stone tablet. There were 3 words written on the stone tablet: Panga Mountain, Panga Mountain, Panga Mountain. It's here. The inheritance must be in this mountain peak. Could it be at the peak of the mountain? Lin Feng could not help but be puzzled. In the distance, a cultivator flew over. When he saw Panga Mountain, he was extremely excited and quickly flew towards it. However, when he was 10 kilometers away from Panga Mountain, waves of death rippled in the void. Bang! The powerful cultivator's body directly exploded. How terrifying! After seeing this, Lin Feng's expression changed slightly. Panga Mountain was not simple. He did not want to fly up like the previous cultivator. Instead, he descended from the sky and walked towards Panga Mountain step by step. When he arrived at the foot of Panga Mountain, Lin Feng felt an oppressive aura. Panga Mountain seemed to have merged with Panga's will. It was very oppressive and uncomfortable. However, this did not scare Lin Feng away. Lin Feng entered Panga Mountain. He could not help but mutter that he could not fly up. He could only walk up. Lin Feng had heard that some ancient godly papers were important to some things. For example, respect. These people were here to search for Panga's orthodoxy. You came to Panga's place of inheritance and wanted to fly up to search for it. It was not too far. Can't you just walk up? If you wanted to obtain the orthodoxy of some experts, you would have to kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times. It did not even require you to kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times. That was already good enough. Wasn't it too disrespectful to Pangu to fly up directly? After all, Pangu was one of the earliest sentient life forms of this epoch. In the legends, Pangu was described as the creator of the world. One had to be full of respect for Pangu. After reaching the top of Mount Pangu, Lin Feng quickly flew up the mountain. Not long after, Lin Feng was stopped. There were more than 10 cultivators here with powerful auras. Why are you stopping me? Lin Feng raised his eyebrows and asked. A young woman in a pink dress with a rather voluptuous figure said, "Young master, please don't misunderstand. We are inviting you to explore a dangerous place." "I'm not free. I want to find Panga's ultimate orthodoxy." Lin Feng directly refused. Chapter 55-54. She said, "Don't worry, young master. Panga's core system is at the peak of the mountain, but it hasn't come out yet. When the 9 bells ring, it'll come out. So even if you go now, you won't get anything. You'll only suffer a calamity if you try to force your way in." "Oh, there's such a thing?" Lin Feng was surprised. "Young master, don't you know? Logically speaking, all cultivators who come with a token should know about this." She said. Lin Feng said, "I spent 30 million high-grade immortal stones to buy a spot. Who knows what's going on in Panga's system? I have to thank this beautiful sister for her reminder." Many people were speechless. 30 million high-grade immortal stones just to buy a slot to enter. This brat was really rich and overbearing. He wondered which power he was from. They didn't ask. Because of the undying realm source, there were many foreign cultivators. For example, some of the cultivators here were foreign cultivators. Many were like Lin Feng. They didn't have tokens and used other methods to get in. But no matter what method they used, as long as they could get in, it was a great harvest. She smiled and said, "Are you willing to join us now, young master?" Lin Feng asked, "Tell me what we're looking for first. If there's no great fortune, I won't go." Someone sneered, "Kid, don't put on airs here. There's no simple person here. If you want to show off, I'm afraid you've chosen the wrong place." Lin Feng was speechless. He was just saying what he wanted to say. If it was an ordinary fortune, Lin Feng wouldn't even care. For Lin Feng, looking for ordinary treasures was simply a waste of time. However, there were always some people who looked at others with their own eyes. There was a saying, "Viewing the sky from the bottom of a well," that was exactly what it meant. Lin Feng said indifferently, "Do I need to show off in front of you? Who do you think you are?" "What did you say?" The cultivator looked coldly at Lin Feng. "You don't understand human language?" Lin Feng replied, "Hee, you're a native of the Undying Realm, right? The natives of the Undying World are so rude." The cultivator mocked. It seemed that this person was not from the Undying World. Otherwise, he would not have said such words. "Zhang Yang, stop talking," the young woman said in a deep voice. Zhang Yang was obviously a little afraid of the young woman. Therefore, after hearing the young woman's words, he did not say anything more. The young woman looked at Lin Feng and said apologetically, "Sir, my friend was quite frank and outspoken, but she didn't mean any harm." Lin Feng replied, "I've always been a magnanimous person, so I won't stoop to his level." "You." Hearing Lin Feng's words, Zhang Yang was so angry that his mouth almost became crooked. His expression became extremely gloomy, but after seeing the young woman's gaze, he swallowed back the words he wanted to say. He didn't say anything else. The young woman introduced herself. "My name is Hong Yueling. How should I address you, sir?" "My name is Ji," Lin Feng said. "Ah, so it's Sir Ji." The young woman smiled and continued, "It's like this. According to what we know, a terrifying cultivator is buried there. That cultivator is a winged dragon. That winged dragon was Pangu's mount back in the days. The winged dragon was a terrifying existence. Its bloodline was second only to the true dragon. It was on the same level as the sky dragons, Eastern divine dragons, and other dragons. However, the winged dragon was very different from the Eastern divine dragons and the sky dragons. For example, the sky dragons, Eastern divine dragons, and even the true dragon were all dragons without wings. Generally, only the Western divine dragons had wings. They looked like huge winged lizards, and their bodies were more bloated. However, the winged dragon had wings. Among the Eastern divine dragons, the winged dragon was the only one with wings. Although the bloodline of the winged dragon was on the same level as the Eastern divine dragon and the sky dragon, it was still much stronger than the Eastern divine dragon and the sky dragon. Perhaps it was because of the extra pair of wings. Pangu was so ancient. He was so powerful. His mount must be incomparably terrifying, and the things he left behind must be extremely precious. "All right, I can join," Lin Feng said. With Lin Feng's addition, the team was like a tiger that had grown wings. However, the young woman and the others had no intention of moving. It seemed that they wanted to continue inviting other cultivators. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He felt that the young woman and the others must have already gone to check out the situation. Otherwise, with so many people joining forces, they would have already gone. After waiting for a while more, another 5 cultivators joined in. Everyone moved. The young woman led the way. Everyone traveled through the mountains. 2 hours later, they arrived at a huge rift valley in the mountains. This area exuded an eerie and terrifying aura. In the depths, darkness lingered. It was obvious that this was an extremely dangerous place. "What's so special about this place?" Lin Feng asked. The young woman replied, "It's very dangerous." Lin Feng smiled and said, "You're so naughty." The young woman smiled and said, "Sir, please don't blame me. I just wanted to adjust the atmosphere." The young woman continued, "Before we enter, we should first understand some things about the Pangu's secret dimension. Everyone should know that Pangu is the incarnation of the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. Actually, to be precise, this saying is not particularly accurate. Pangu came before the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. According to what I know, Pangu suffered a calamity back then and had no choice but to reincarnate. This reincarnation body is the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. Oh, there's such a thing? Lin Feng was shocked. The young woman nodded and continued. When Pangu's corpse was decomposed, it was decomposed on Mount Pangu. Pangu's mount, the winged dragon, was also injured at that time. In the end, it fell on Mount Pangu. I think that when the winged dragon died, it was extremely unwilling, so after it died, its resentment was extremely strong. Such a strong resentment caused some changes in this place. Lin Feng said, I presume that you've already gone to investigate. Yes. The young woman nodded. Lin Feng asked, What did you find? The young woman replied, We didn't find anything because we didn't even go to the depths. Not only did we not find anything, but we also lost 3 people. Is it that dangerous? Hearing this, Lin Feng couldn't help but frown slightly. This place had indeed piqued his curiosity. The group didn't stop and directly entered the large rift valley in front of them. After entering the palace, Lin Feng sensed a strange and gloomy qi which was penetrating into his body. Chapter 55. This place was indeed very strange. So Lin Feng didn't dare to be careless. They continued to walk deeper into the cave. The further they went, the more they could feel the eeriness of this place. They could even faintly hear the eerie sound of teeth grinding. That sound was too terrifying, and it made everyone's hair stand on end. What the hell is that sound coming from? Asked a cultivator who had joined the group later. It can't be an evil ghost or something else, right? Someone else asked. Let's try searching, said a cultivator. Everyone used their divine senses to search, but they couldn't find anything. The sound was too eerie, and it was even more obvious in this place. No one could completely ignore the sound. Even Lin Feng couldn't do that. The young woman said, We didn't hear this sound before, but it's strange this time. It's really strange. She couldn't find out what was going on. Everyone had no choice but to be patient and continue walking deeper into the cave. Time passed. The sound of teeth grinding could still be heard. Many people felt even more uneasy. This kind of voice could give people an extremely strong sense of danger. However, no one had any intention of leaving. They had already come this far, so how could they leave? At the very least, they had to see if there were any opportunities inside before deciding whether to leave or not. Finally, everyone arrived at the place where the young woman and the others had been attacked. When Lin Feng and the others arrived, they didn't encounter any trouble. Lin Feng and the others couldn't help but feel extremely surprised. They had thought that they would encounter some inexplicable attack here, but that didn't happen. The young woman pointed in a direction and said, Look, they're corpses. Lin Feng and the others looked over and saw 3 corpses. Lin Feng and the others walked over. They discovered that although the 3 corpses were dead, they hadn't been damaged. A cultivator quickly walked over, wanting to take the storage rings from the corpses. This guy was obviously trying to take advantage of the fact that no one had reacted to the situation to make a fortune out of the corpses. This wishful thinking was quite good. However, when the cultivator approached the 3 corpses and wanted to take the storage rings from their hands, the cultivator suddenly stopped. Suddenly, something terrifying happened. The cultivator's body trembled violently. Next, he fell to the ground. After twitching a few times, he breathed his last and died. This scene was truly bizarre to the extreme, causing everyone to jump in fright. No one knew how this cultivator died. In the blink of an eye, this person had died. What exactly happened? Everyone was puzzled. Then, they looked at each other. No one dared to go forward to check for fear of being robbed. Heavenly Reflection Talisman. At this moment, the young woman spoke. She took out an item. It was a yellow talisman. The yellow talisman was very extraordinary and emitted a violent fluctuation. What talisman is this? Someone asked doubtfully. The young woman replied, "It's a talisman that I obtained by chance. It's said to be able to see through the mountains and rivers of the heavens and see through all nothingness. Perhaps I can use this talisman to see some strange places. Normally, I wouldn't be willing to use this talisman, but now the situation is not good. I have no choice but to use this talisman." Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed. The talisman was extraordinary and would definitely play an important role. A high-level cultivator said, "Quickly let the talisman show its power." The young woman nodded and didn't waste any time. She directly activated the talisman. After the talisman was activated, it directly flew into the air. Then, the talisman shook and emitted a terrifying fluctuation. In the next moment, the talisman turned into a mirror. It was really strange to the extreme. A talisman turning into a mirror. This was the first time Lin Feng had seen such a situation. The talisman that had turned into a mirror emitted a mirror-like light. The mirror-like light spread out in all directions. It shrouded the entire area within it. However, nothing appeared in the mirror. This was a little strange. Finally, the mirror dissipated. "This is really strange. I didn't find anything special," the young woman said. "Maybe the talisman's power isn't enough." Someone said. The young woman said, "This talisman was forged by an expert at the 9th level of the Saint Realm. If this kind of talisman isn't enough, then perhaps no other talisman will be able to work." Lin Feng said, "Why bother? Since we don't know what's going on, let's not think about it or touch the dead people. Let's just continue moving forward." The others nodded. However, there were also people who wanted to leave. This was because they felt that it was too dangerous. Everything was unknown, so they didn't want to continue taking risks. Everyone had their own ambitions. Since the other party wanted to leave, the others naturally couldn't force them. In the end, 3 cultivators left, and the others continued to move forward. Everyone saw many skeletons. It seemed that someone had been here before. Lin Feng said, "It seems that Panga's secret realm has been opened more than once. These skeletons are probably left behind when cultivators died in the past." The other cultivators nodded. This was indeed possible. A cultivator said, "Panga's ultimate Taoist teachings couldn't have been taken away by someone else, right?" Many people couldn't help but reveal bewildered expressions. What this cultivator said was possible. The young woman said, "Although it's possible, I don't think it's very likely. If someone else had taken away Panga's ultimate Taoist teachings, there wouldn't have been so many tokens of Panga scattered throughout the universe. We also wouldn't be gathered here today." "Yes, I think so too," another cultivator said. Another cultivator said, agreeing with what the young woman said. Everyone nodded and didn't say anything else. The most important thing right now wasn't to think about Panga's ultimate Taoist teachings. Rather, it was to see if they could obtain anything from the place where Rain Dragon had died. Lin Feng and the others didn't encounter any danger for the rest of their journey. Finally, they arrived at the deepest part of the secret realm. "Look," someone pointed at the deepest part of the secret realm. Everyone looked over, and many people gasped. There was a huge creature residing in the deepest part of the secret realm. That creature's aura was extremely ferocious and terrifying. It was a dragon, a huge dragon with wings. However, The dragon was already dead. Even though it had been dead for who knew how many years, its aura was still so terrifying. One could only imagine how terrifying this rain dragon had been when it was alive. Chapter 55, 56. They didn't act rashly. Instead, they observed the winged dragon's corpse. The winged dragon's corpse was indeed very terrifying. Therefore, they had to wait until they had a clear idea of what was going on. If they rushed forward recklessly and found out that the winged dragon's corpse had turned into an evil corpse, wouldn't that be suicide? After careful observation, Lin Feng and the others found that the winged dragon's corpse was indeed completely dead. It didn't seem to be emitting any evil corpse's aura. Lin Feng and the others couldn't help but sigh in relief. They didn't have to worry so much anymore. "Let's go and take a look," said a cultivator. After investigating the winged dragon's corpse, they were no longer worried about the winged dragon's corpse. They all walked towards it. At that moment, the winged dragon let out a series of cries. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that the winged dragon was very interested in something. That was why it made such a cry. Otherwise, the little dragon wouldn't have made such a cry. Lin Feng sent a message to the winged dragon using his divine sense. "Little guy, what do you want?" The winged dragon bared its fangs and brandished its claws. Lin Feng roughly understood what the winged dragon was trying to say. It seemed that the winged dragon wanted the inner core. That was naturally the most precious thing on the winged dragon's body. Moreover, the inner core was very useful for the winged dragon's cultivation. He just didn't know if the others wanted the inner core too. However, no matter who wanted it, Lin Feng wouldn't give it to them. He was determined to get the inner core. Everyone arrived before the winged dragon's corpse. Soon, they discovered something shocking. The winged dragon's body had been cut open. They didn't know who did it, but since that person could cut open the winged dragon's corpse, their strength must be extraordinary. Damn, don't tell me that all the treasures on the winged dragon's body have been taken away by someone else. Damn, this is so depressing. I wonder which immoral bastard did it. Many people started cursing and swearing. It was no wonder that they would curse the other party so angrily. Everyone had gone through a lot of trouble to get here. They all wanted to get some opportunities, but their opportunities had been taken away by someone else. Naturally, they were furious. "Enter the winged dragon's body and take a look," said the young woman. Everyone nodded and rushed into the winged dragon's body. Although winged dragon's body hadn't decayed, it was close to being petrified. With a light tap, it would even produce a thumping sound. The sound was similar to the sound of knocking on a rock. The winged dragon's body was huge, and its blood vessels were like huge passageways that extended in all directions. After entering, the young woman said, "Let's split up. Who can obtain what will depend on their own luck." "All right," everyone replied. Then they quickly separated. Xiaolong flew out from the space of time. After the little guy flew out, it took Lin Feng and flew in a certain direction. The little fellow appeared very excited. However, it did not take long before Lin Feng saw some skeletons. They were the skeletons of those who had died inside the winged dragon's body. They must have been the cultivators who had entered the winged dragon's body earlier. It was unknown how they had died here. Lin Feng checked the storage rings of the skeletons. He found that the storage rings of these skeletons were all damaged. It seemed that it was because of the passage of time. Therefore, these storage rings were all damaged. Lin Feng casually threw the storage rings on the ground. He and Xiaolong continued to look for the location of the inner core. Soon, Xiaolong found the inner core. The inner core of the winged dragon was golden in color. It was the size of a fist, and it seemed to have been petrified. However, even if it was petrified, Xiaolong could still swallow it. Xiaolong was very excited and let out a few loud cries. Then it quickly flew toward the inner core and swallowed it in one gulp. However, at that moment, a golden python with 2 wings suddenly appeared and swallowed Xiaolong. The golden python was in a state of invisibility. It was too strange. Even Lin Feng did not notice the golden python's trace until Xiaolong appeared. Then, the golden python suddenly appeared and attacked Xiaolong. After all, Xiaolong was still young. When it was suddenly attacked, its first thought was to dodge. However, Xiaolong could not dodge even if it wanted to. The golden python was too terrifying. Just as Xiaolong was about to be swallowed, Lin Feng appeared in time. He held the epic war spear and swept it toward the golden python. Bang! The spear collided with the golden boa's body. The golden boa was blown away. Lin Feng hastily put the little dragon back into the time and space. Winged golden crown python. I can't believe I encountered such a legendary creature. Lin Feng could not help but be surprised. This was a creature that had long been extinct in the outside world. Lin Feng had read about it before, but he had never seen the true body of this python. This was the first time he had seen the true body of this python. "Lowly human, I will eat you," shouted the gigantic python coldly. It then immediately threw itself at Lin Feng. Its gigantic tail was moving towards Lin Feng. Humph! Lin Feng could not help but snort. The war spear in his hand swept toward the python again. Bang! Lin Feng's epic war spear collided with the python's tail. The python was strong. However, Lin Feng's cultivation was too tyrannical. With the help of the epic war spear, the python was no match for Lin Feng. The huge python was sent flying again by Lin Feng. Many of the python's scales had fallen off. After seeing those scales fall off, the python's eyes lit up. Lin Feng sneered and continued to attack the python. He wanted to kill the python, but he did not expect the python to disappear. Then it quickly escaped. Lin Feng chased after it. Relying on the python's aura, he followed it all the way. A short time after, a horrible shriek spread in the air. When Lin Feng heard the shriek, he quickly flew over. He saw a cultivator die tragically. There were no wounds on the cultivator's body, but he was killed. Lin Feng guessed that his soul had been attacked. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, many people who heard the commotion quickly rushed over. What happened? Someone asked. Lin Feng said, "This person was attacked by something and died tragically here." Everyone gathered around. "There are no wounds." Someone frowned. Zhang Yang sneered and said, "The fact that there are no wounds means that he was killed by a soul attack." However, a ranker of this level has a very strong soul. It would not be easy to kill him with a soul attack unless you are familiar with him. Then you can use a soul attack when he is not prepared. Only then can you kill him by surprise. Chapter 55-57. After hearing Zhang Yang's words, Lin Feng could not help but frown. Lin Feng was not stupid, so he naturally understood the meaning behind Zhang Yang's words. This guy obviously wanted to say that he was the one who killed the cultivator. Lin Feng and Zhang Yang had a verbal conflict earlier, so this guy finally found a chance to slander him. Lin Feng said sarcastically, "Do you think anyone will believe such stupid words? If you don't want people to know, don't do it. It's too late to cover it up now. What's done is done. You have to admit it even if you don't want to." Zhang Yang said sarcastically. Ha 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 ha. Lin Feng could not help but laugh. He looked at the other cultivators and asked, "What do you guys think?" The others did not speak, but their eyes flickered. Lin Feng sneered in his heart. It seemed that some people were plotting against him. The world of cultivators had always been like this. The strong were respected, and the weak were bullied. In the eyes of these people, he was a young cultivator. He also seemed to be quite rich. Wasn't it normal to kill him and take his treasures? Previously, they wanted to explore together, so they did not make a move. Now that there was no danger, there was no need to care about anything else. At this time, the young woman said, "I think there's some misunderstanding in this matter. We can't jump to conclusions so easily." The young woman's character was not bad. Lin Feng said, "Fairy, you don't have to say good things for me. Today, I'll kill Zhang Yang first." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Feng rushed toward Zhang Yang with the epic war spear in his hand. "Kid, you're the one who wants to die. Don't blame me." Zhang Yang sneered. This guy obviously looked down on Lin Feng. Zhang Yang's weapon was a long sword. He jumped up, became one with the sword, and slashed at Lin Feng. Zhang Yang's cultivation was quite strong, but it also depended on who he was compared to. If he was up against Lin Feng, he was far inferior. Lin Feng held the war spear in his hand and swept it toward Zhang Yang, directly sweeping away Zhang Yang's sword. Zhang Yang's facial expression drastically changed. He hadn't thought that Lin Feng would be so strong. He quickly retreated and wanted to dodge Lin Feng's attack, but Lin Feng had already taken a step forward and thrust his spear towards Zhang Yang. Pooh! With a tearing sound, Lin Feng's tyrannical spear directly pierced Zhang Yang's body. Ah! Zhang Yang could not help but scream. "Save me!" Zhang Yang began to beg. A few cultivators who had a good relationship with Zhang Yang had gloomy expressions on their faces. One of them said coldly, "Kid, don't go too far. Hurry up and let Zhang Yang go. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite." Not. How could he not be polite? Eat my spear as well. Lin Feng sneered and walked towards the cultivator. Lin Feng's speed was too fast. In an instant, he arrived beside the cultivator. The war spear in his hand pierced the cultivator's body. The cultivator's face suddenly changed, and he quickly brought out a defensive magic treasure to block Lin Feng's attack. However, it was useless. Lin Feng's war spear instantly pierced through the defensive magic treasure. Then, Lin Feng's war spear pierced through the cultivator's body. Ah! Another scream rang out. Lin Feng's spear had also pierced through the cultivator. Lin Feng's war spear had Zhang Yang and his friends hanging on it. When the others saw Lin Feng's ferocious methods, their faces changed greatly. The few cultivators who had a good relationship with Zhang Yang did not dare to say anything. They were afraid of getting into trouble. "Mercy! Mercy! We were wrong. Please spare us." Zhang Yang and his friend looked at Lin Feng in horror. They were strong, so even if their bodies were pierced, they would not die immediately. Lin Feng would let them go now. If they recuperated for a while, their injuries should be able to recover. However, Lin Feng did not intend to let these guys go. Since they were courting death, he would fulfill their wish. A merciful heart could be, but it was not for enemies. It was for enemies. It had to be like a demon. Lin Feng revealed a bright smile and said, "If you want to live, you should not have provoked me. I have always had a bad temper. If anyone dares to provoke me, I will definitely let them die without a burial place." As his voice fell, Lin Feng's right hand suddenly shook. Bang! Zhang Yang and the other cultivators' bodies directly exploded. The two of them died on the spot. Lin Feng looked at the young woman and said, "This place is dangerous. Try not to stay for too long." Then Lin Feng walked outside. The young woman looked at the others and asked, "What about you guys?" "We are looking for the sacred bone of the winged dragon." The others replied, "The sacred bone of the winged dragon." It recorded the winged dragon's divine ability. It was definitely extremely precious. The young woman said, "Then I will go out first." The young woman did not stay and quickly chased after Lin Feng. She caught up to Lin Feng in a short time. Ah, ah, ah. At that moment, screams could be heard. The young woman's face suddenly changed. She did not know what had happened inside the winged dragon's corpse. No one rushed out from inside. Those people seemed to have met with a disaster. Something is coming out. Let's go quickly. Lin Feng's face suddenly changed, and he shouted in a deep voice. He could feel that the existence chasing after them was definitely more than 10 times stronger than the python he had seen before. It made Lin Feng's heart tremble. Chapter 55-58. The young woman's cultivation wasn't bad. After Lin Feng's warning, she also sensed the terrifying aura. Her expression became extremely unsightly, but she wasn't good at speed. The aura behind them was getting more and more terrifying. The young woman's face became pale, and she couldn't help but feel despair. Lin Feng couldn't help but frown. The young woman was a good person, and he couldn't bear to let her die here. Lin Feng turned back and hugged the young woman's slender waist. Then, he quickly rushed outside. Sensing Lin Feng's strong masculine aura, the young woman's pretty face couldn't help but blush, but she was very grateful to Lin Feng. If it wasn't for Lin Feng's warning, she would still be inside the winged dragon's corpse. If that was the case, she would have died a miserable death inside the winged dragon's corpse. Although she had survived, she was still scared. Fortunately, she had listened to Lin Feng and came out early. At this moment, in Lin Feng's arms, she felt very good. His embrace made her feel very warm and comfortable. Of course, the most important thing was that she felt at ease. His embrace gave her a sense of security that she had never felt before. The aura behind them was getting closer and closer. The unknown existence was extremely fast, but Lin Feng wasn't slow either. Before the unknown existence could chase after them, Lin Feng successfully brought the young woman out. The unknown existence seemed to want to rush out, but it was repelled by a terrifying force. This scene surprised Lin Feng. It seemed that the unknown existence was sealed in the canyon. We're out of danger. Lin Feng sighed in relief. Yes. The young woman blushed and nodded. Her body was still pressed against Lin Feng's. Lin Feng didn't think about anything else. Now that they were out of danger, he couldn't help but feel that he had been a little rude. Lin Feng let go of the young woman and said, "I'm really sorry. I didn't do it on purpose." The young woman blushed and said, "It's okay. I've always been a person who doesn't care about trifles." Lin Feng replied, "Let's find a place to rest." The young woman didn't have any objections and looked for a place to rest with Lin Feng. The two of them found a quiet boulder and sat on it. The woman asked, "What was chasing us earlier?" Lin Feng shook his head and said, "I don't know what it is exactly, but I have a feeling. The thing that's chasing us is probably an evil spirit." Evil spirit? Is there really such a powerful evil spirit? The young woman said with a slight frown. Lin Feng asked, "What if this evil spirit is actually a winged dragon?" The young woman's face showed a surprised expression. It was indeed as Lin Feng had speculated. An ordinary evil spirit might not be so threatening, but an evil spirit transformed from a winged dragon was different. The winged dragon was simply too terrifying. Therefore, an evil spirit transformed from a winged dragon would be extremely terrifying. However, Lin Feng couldn't tell whether the evil spirit was actually a winged dragon or not. After all, the evil spirit gave off a very strange feeling. Although Lin Feng could sense its existence, he couldn't see what it looked like. However, no matter what the evil spirit was, it was all in the past. They didn't have to worry about being attacked by evil spirits anymore. Lin Feng didn't continue talking about this topic with the young woman. He lay down on the boulder and closed his eyes to rest, waiting for the final inheritance of Pangu's secret plane to open. Dong, dong, dong. On this day, 9 heavenly sounds rang out. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The cultivators who were resting in various places quickly flew up. Panga's orthodoxy is about to appear. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. The young woman was still by Lin Feng's side. Over the past 3 days, Lin Feng and the young woman had chatted quite a bit. They also became quite familiar with each other. Panga's orthodoxy was about to appear. It was a very exciting thing. Lin Feng quickly flew up. The young woman followed suit. They arrived at the top of the mountain. It was originally very dangerous and impossible to climb. But now, the danger was gone. Everyone could climb the mountain now. Lin Feng saw at least a dozen figures quickly flying up the mountain. I wonder if all those people have a token, or did only some of them have tokens? Chaos energy lingered at the peak of the mountain. To everyone's surprise, the peak seemed to have been split open by an axe. In the middle was a huge rift valley. Above the rift valley, there was a stone bridge. Outside the stone bridge, there was a huge stone tablet. On the stone tablet, there were 4 large words written in a flamboyant style. Bridge of the Great Tao. There were some introductions below. Lin Feng read them and understood what the Bridge of the Great Tao was. To obtain Panga's orthodoxy, one first had to cross the bridge. When one stepped onto the Bridge of the Great Tao, one had to accept the test of the Bridge of the Great Tao. He didn't know what the test was for now. If he was recognized, he would be able to cross the Bridge of the Great Path. If he was not recognized, then, if one wasn't recognized, they still wanted to force their way through. That would be dangerous. At that time, they might end up dead. Of course, not everyone would die. There might be some lucky ones. They could force their way through the bridge. Be careful. Lin Feng looked at the young woman and reminded her, "You too, young master." The young woman said. Lin Feng nodded. Without saying anything more, it was time to part with the young woman. Lin Feng stepped onto the Bridge of the Great Tao and walked towards the other side. The Bridge of the Great Tao was very strange. Chaos energy roiled and separated everyone. Suddenly, holy light lingered in front of him. In the holy light, a mysterious existence appeared. The mysterious existence was tall and burly. His eyes were bright and piercing. He stood in the void and seemed to be the backbone of heaven and earth. He could hold up heaven and earth. When he saw that existence, Lin Feng's heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. Could that being be Pangu? "Aren't you going to kneel when you see Pangu?" said the strong cultivator. Suddenly, terrifying energies filled the air and moved towards Lin Feng, oppressing him. He wanted to force Lin Feng to kneel on the ground. "Pangu, I respect you as a top god of the absolute beginning, but if you want to use Panga's Tao against me, you won't be able to do it. I cultivate the Tao of a sovereign. This isn't your real body. Even if your real body were here, you wouldn't be able to force me to submit. Activate your Tao of a sovereign," shouted Lin Feng coldly. He activated his Tao of a sovereign. When Lin Feng activated his Tao of a sovereign, Lin Feng's Tao of a sovereign spread out. The pressure released by Panga's Tao of a sovereign was instantly dispersed. Panga's silhouette in the void disappeared as well. Chapter 55, 59. Hee, sure enough, my supreme Tao is more awesome. Lin Feng smiled. Lin Feng's Tao of the Supreme Cultivator had reached the level of high level, and it was becoming more and more powerful. Even Panga's Tao couldn't compete with the Supreme Tao. This was why the Supreme Tao was so terrifying. It could suppress all other Taos. Lin Feng continued forward. He successfully crossed the bridge of the Great Path. As for whether the young woman could cross the bridge or not, it wasn't Lin Feng's concern. If she couldn't cross the bridge of the Great Path, then she could leave. It was better not to force some opportunities that didn't belong to her. Lin Feng quickly rushed into the depths and saw a huge altar. There were a few things placed on top of the tables. The first item was an axe. It should be the sky-splitting axe, or Panga's axe. Although the names were different, they referred to the same thing. The second item was an ancient book made of bluestone. Lin Feng couldn't help but be moved. Could it be the legendary Pangu immortal scripture? The third item was a black jade tablet. He didn't know what it was for the time being, but since Pangu deliberately left it here, it must be extremely extraordinary. The fourth item was a crystal bead. Lin Feng didn't know what it was, but he felt that it must be extremely extraordinary. At this moment, more than a dozen cultivators were besieging a cultivator. The besieged cultivator was none other than Huangfu Qingtian. Huangfu Qingtian was indeed worthy of being the first successor of Pangu. He could even borrow the power of the altar. No wonder those cultivators besieged Huangfu Qingtian. If they didn't kill him, they wouldn't be able to get those things. Those things belonged to Huangfu Qingtian, the first successor. How dare you try to get the opportunities left behind by Pangu Immortal Venerable? You're really overestimating yourselves. Today, I'll let you feel the power of Pangu's Tao. Huangfu Qingtian shouted coldly. After his voice fell, a terrifying aura pervaded the world. Pangu's Tao, unique and honorable, martial arts universe, suppressing myriad gods. When Huangfu Qingtian's voice faded away, a terrifying aura of the great Tao permeated between the heavens and the earth. The aura of the great Tao made people's hearts tremble. At that moment, Huangfu Qingtian seemed to have transformed into Pangu. Huangfu Qingtian took a step forward like Pangu. Bang! 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 That formless power directly slammed into many people. Wow! 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 The cultivators spat out mouthfuls of blood, their faces pale. He was sent flying. Although those cultivators were powerful, they were still somewhat inferior to the current Huangfu Qingtian. The current Huangfu Qingtian was too overbearing. Huangfu Qingtian wanted to collect Pangu's system after repelling them, but a cultivator came from the distance. His eyes narrowed after seeing this cultivator. His eyes flickered with dense killing intent. Huangfu Qingtian, I wouldn't have thought that you'd be able to survive until now, but it's over now. Panga's Tao system is mine. Lin Feng said indifferently. It was as if he was in control of everything. If Huangfu Qingtian left quickly after obtaining the system and found a place to cultivate for many years, he would be a great threat with the help of the heaven-splitting axe. However, Huangfu Qingtian hadn't obtained Panga's system yet, so Zhou Bao would never give him the chance to do so. Ha ha ha! Huangfu Qingtian burst into laughter when he heard Lin Feng's words. He looked at Lin Feng with a mocking expression and said disdainfully, Lin Feng, didn't you see that some saints were repelled by me just now? I can borrow the power of the altar. I'm the first successor of Pangu. You can't compare to me now. I know your cultivation is strong, but so what? No matter how strong you are, you can't be stronger than those saints. Huangfu Qingtian had fought with Lin Feng several times, so he could roughly figure out Lin Feng's strength. However, he didn't know that Lin Feng had entered the world of time reversal. When Lin Feng entered the world of time reversal, he was only an Earth immortal, the third level of the hollow immortal realm. Now, Lin Feng had become a Tao immortal, the second level of the true immortal realm. Lin Feng's cultivation had made such a breakthrough in a short period of time, which was simply unimaginable in the outside world. Only in the world of time, reversal, could such a magnificent feat be accomplished. However, it was obvious that Huangfu Qingtian still thought that Lin Feng was the Lin Feng he knew. Ignorant, Lin Feng sneered. Huangfu Qingtian had been defeated by Lin Feng several times and had even been killed by Lin Feng. Naturally, his hatred for Lin Feng was endless. He didn't want to say anything more to Lin Feng. Huangfu Qingtian directly operated the Panga's Dao to deal with Lin Feng. With the help of the altar, the Panga's Dao was indeed extremely terrifying. Huangfu Qingtian, I'll let you have a taste of my Dao today. Lin Feng sneered. He unleashed his Dao of supremacy. When Lin Feng released his supreme Dao, the sky and the earth were annihilated. Suddenly, they surged. The power of the supreme Dao was released and directly suppressed the Panga's Dao. Bang! The two Daos collided fiercely. The Panga's Dao was instantly destroyed by Lin Feng's supreme Dao. Then, Lin Feng's supreme Dao fiercely bombarded Huangfu Qingtian. Huangfu Qingtian was sent flying by the supreme Dao. Barf! In the air, Huangfu Qingtian vomited blood. No, this is absolutely impossible. How did you become so powerful? Huangfu Qingtian couldn't accept this. He roared angrily, his eyes full of madness and ferocity. Lin Feng sneered. Huangfu Qingtian, you're a true immortal now. You should make your own Dao your main Dao instead of making other people's Dao your main Dao. No matter how powerful other people's Dao is, it's not your own Dao. If you want to embark on the supreme Dao, you need to have a strong Dao. This alone is destined to fail. As soon as Lin Feng's voice fell, an even more powerful Dao condensed in an instant. Then, once again, it fiercely attacked Huangfu Qingtian. The attack of Dao was invisible and intangible. It was difficult to dodge. Huangfu Qingtian couldn't dodge Lin Feng's Dao. Bang! He was sent flying again, and half of his body directly exploded. Chapter 5560. Who's that kid? How can he be so strong? The experts who were injured by Huangfu Qingtian in the distance were very puzzled. Most of them were foreign cultivators. There were even a few saints among them, but they were still defeated by Huangfu Qingtian. Lin Feng defeated Huangfu Qingtian so easily. It was a bit abnormal. Lin Feng was too young. How could he have such extraordinary strength at such a young age? Even if he started cultivating in his mother's womb, he couldn't be so strong. But all of this happened in front of them, so they couldn't help but believe it. A group of people wanted to know who Lin Feng was, but no one knew Lin Feng. Don't be complacent too early. I have a way to kill you. Huangfu Qingtian roared in anger. Huangfu Qingtian continuously changed his hand seals. Whoosh! The sky-splitting axe flew out quickly and landed in Huangfu Qingtian's hand. The sky-splitting axe was an ancient weapon-level treasure. Huangfu Qingtian's confidence skyrocketed after he grasped it. Die! Huangfu Qingtian shouted coldly and jumped out, chopping at Lin Feng with the axe. Even the void was shattered by the impact. Terrifying, terrifying, terrifying. It was indeed a treasure passed down by Pangu. However, Lin Feng wasn't afraid at all. Lin Feng had more than one ancient weapon-level treasure. There was also the epic war spear, which was an ancient weapon-level treasure. Lin Feng planned to collect 9 ancient weapon-level treasures to form a few ultimate killing formations recorded in the stone scripture. These ultimate killing formations were special because they were directly imprinted with formation runes on the ancient weapons. The 9 ancient weapon-level treasures could be connected through the ultimate killing formation. Their power skyrocketed. When the time came, It would be like slaying gods and slaying Buddhas. Epic spear art, sky-splitting spear. Lin Feng shouted coldly and rushed out with the epic war spear in his hand. The epic war spear in his hand collided with the sky-splitting axe in Huangfu Qingtian's hand. Although the power of the sky-splitting axe was terrifying enough, Huangfu Qingtian couldn't release the power of the sky-splitting axe. The reason for this was that Huangfu Qingtian had just used the heaven-splitting axe. One had to know, the epical war spear was a supreme treasure on the same level as the sky-carving axe. Moreover, it was a supreme treasure passed down from Lin Feng's ancestors. After obtaining the epical war spear, Lin Feng spent a long time familiarizing himself with it. Huangfu Qingtian had obtained something left behind by Pangu, not even his ancestor. It would be more difficult for him to adapt to it. Therefore, how could Huangfu Qingtian display the power of the heaven-splitting axe? Lin Feng's situation was completely different. He could now wield the epical war spear as he wished. Moreover, he had the epical spear technique to complement the epical war spear. The power of the epic war spear was too terrifying. When the two sides collided, the heaven-opening axe in Huangfu Qingtian's hand was directly sent flying by Lin Feng. Not good. Huangfu Qingtian's expression changed greatly. He wanted to retreat, but at that moment, Lin Feng had already caught up to him. Lin Feng's epical war spear pierced towards Huangfu Qingtian's body. Huangfu Qingtian didn't have time to dodge. With a piercing sound, Lin Feng's epical war spear pierced through Huangfu Qingtian's chest. Ah! Huangfu Qingtian screamed in pain. Why is this happening? I, Huangfu Qingtian, have been a peerless genius since I was a child. I, Huangfu Qingtian, have never been defeated. Until I met you. Are you my nemesis? Huangfu Qingtian's eyes were filled with hatred. He glared at Lin Feng. You must have heard of the saying, those who commit injustice are doomed to destruction, right? You only have yourself to blame for the current situation. You can't blame anyone else. Lin Feng said indifferently, I brought this upon myself. Ha ha. I was powerful back then, so I could do whatever I wanted. This is how the world works. The biggest mistake I made back then was agreeing to your 10-year agreement. I should have killed you immediately. If I had killed you back then, none of this would have happened. Huangfu Qingtian said furiously. He was unwilling, truly unwilling. Looking back on his life, how glorious was it? However, until he lost to Lin Feng in a life-and-death battle, there was a turning point in his life. Although he had returned, he had been blinded by hatred. Huangfu Qingtian's motivation to live was to kill Lin Feng. Then he would take revenge. Many years passed. He thought that he could kill Lin Feng, but the reality was so cruel. It turned out that what he thought was actually a joke. Huangfu Qingtian couldn't accept it. He didn't want to die. However, today, they were strangers. The soul reconstruction technique could only be used once in a lifetime. This time, he would die. Huangfu Qingtian knew that he would be doomed eternally. However, he couldn't kill Lin Feng. He really hated it, said Lin Feng indifferently. In life, you have to look forward, not backward. Don't bully a young man because he's poor. Therefore, Huangfu Qingtian, you're a failure. You can go to hell now. Lin Feng held the battle spear with one hand and suddenly shook. Bang! Huangfu Qingtian's body exploded. After Huangfu Qingtian's body exploded, a resentful voice rang out, I sacrifice myself. I beg Pangu the Immortal to avenge me. That voice turned out to be Huangfu Qingtian's. When the voice faded away, Huangfu Qingtian's exploded flesh and blood burned fiercely. In an instant, It turned into a strange kind of energy. Then the energy, it quickly gathered into the altar. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The altar began to shake violently. Before Huang Fu Qingtian died, he sacrificed himself. Lin Feng's expression changed slightly. He quickly put away the 4 things left by Pangu. Then he rushed down the mountain. Crack, crack. However, Lin Feng didn't run far before the altar cracked. A beam of divine light rose into the air. In the divine light, a blood-red figure floated. The blood-red figure seemed to be the existence summoned by Huang Fu Qingtian after he sacrificed himself. The blood-red figure contained an extremely evil aura. It's an evil will left by Pangu after absorbing Huang Fu Qingtian's flesh and blood. It turned into a blood-red incarnation. Someone exclaimed. The rest of the people's expressions changed greatly. The blood-red Pangu was really terrifying. Its aura was so strong that it shocked people. You killed my successor. You should die. The blood-red Pangu looked coldly at Lin Feng, his voice containing monstrous killing intent. He jumped up and quickly charged at Lin Feng. Chapter 55, 61. F***K. This guy is terrifying. Lin Feng pulled a long face. Blood-red Pangu was too strong. He couldn't escape. Since it was that way, he had to fight. Lin Feng wasn't afraid of blood-red Pangu. Lin Feng took out the Phoenix Shield and activated the ruler's armor. Lin Feng also activated the ruler's armor. At the same time, the Golden Dwarf, the Magic Lotus, the Stone Golem clone, the Saint Bone, and the ruler's armor were all mobilized. The energy poured into Lin Feng's body. After receiving the energy, Lin Feng immediately felt extremely comfortable. It was a comfortable feeling he had never felt before. Fuck! Lin Feng held the epic war spear in one hand and attacked the bloody Pangu. This boy is really tough. The bloody Pangu is so strong, but he wants to fight it head-on. Someone said in surprise, he's really strong, and he has a lot of treasures. It's hard to say who will win. Someone else said, Huang Fu Qingtian sacrificed himself to summon the bloody Pangu. It's really too strong. It's too difficult to deal with such an existence. Someone else said, that's right. That's why it's not easy to deal with the bloody Pangu. If you're not careful, you can die, said an old cultivator. It wasn't easy to deal with the bloody Pangu. Everyone knew that. They also wanted to see if Lin Feng had a way to deal with the bloody Pangu. In fact, many people hoped that Lin Feng would be killed by the bloody Pangu. After all, the bloody Pangu wasn't a real body of flesh and blood. After killing Lin Feng, it might disappear. If the bloody Pangu killed Lin Feng's treasures, the 4 items left by the bloody Pangu would become ownerless. Wouldn't it be too easy for them? Bang! At this moment, Lin Feng and Crimson Pangu collided fiercely. Crimson Pangu's attack landed on the Phoenix Shield. A terrifying strength bombarded Lin Feng and sent him flying. The Phoenix Shield and Dominator's armor deflected most of the force, but the remaining force still caused Lin Feng's face to turn as pale as paper. Fortunately, Lin Feng's cultivation was strong enough. Otherwise, it would be hard to say what would have happened. What a monster! Lin Feng could not help but sigh. At this moment, the blood-colored Pangu charged towards Lin Feng once more. This kind of head-on confrontation was really too disadvantageous for Lin Feng. Lin Feng was very clear about this. Therefore, he had to think of another way. It would be great if he could break the blood-colored Panga's unstoppable momentum. Lin Feng thought of the art of curses. Perhaps he could use the art of curses to break the blood-colored Panga's unstoppable momentum. After thinking about this, Lin Feng hurriedly used the art of curses. However, the blood-colored Pangu was stronger, and its resistance was not something ordinary cultivators could compare to. Therefore, it was not easy to use the art of curses to hurt the blood-colored Pangu. The blood-colored Pangu charged towards Lin Feng once more. A terrifying attack condensed and continued to blast towards Lin Feng. Bang! Accompanied by the sound of a violent collision, Lin Feng was sent flying for the second time. Wah! Lin Feng could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Lin Feng was really depressed. The blood-colored Pango was really too awesome. He really wanted to stomp it to death. But he still had to use the art of curses to deal with it. The blood-colored Panga's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer. Lin Feng was being suppressed too much. That kid might really be killed. That's a good thing. If that kid is killed, all the treasures will be ours. Some cultivators were communicating with each other using their divine senses. Die! The blood-colored Pangu attacked again, its eyes flashing with a dense killing intent. The blood-colored Panga's aura soared to the sky. Perhaps, in the blood-colored Panga's opinion, Lin Feng would be completely defeated this time. But at that moment, pooh! The sound of flesh being pierced rang out. A bloody hole had appeared on the blood-colored Panga's chest. After circulating the art of curses over 100 times, Lin Feng finally succeeded. Lin Feng was really depressed against others. He might have succeeded after circulating the art of curses a few times. But against the blood-colored Pangu, he had to circulate it over 100 times. Fortunately, the result was not bad. After the blood-colored Panga's body was injured, its blood chi was dispersing rapidly. After all, it wasn't made of flesh and blood. Once its body was injured, it would be seriously injured. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. This was a great opportunity to kill the blood-colored Pangu. He quickly rushed forward. Then, he stabbed his spear at the blood-colored Pangu. Kid, you're quite strong. Even I was tricked by you, but it's useless. You're still going to die today. Because even an 8th level Saint Realm cultivator would die in my hands, let alone someone like you. The blood-colored Pangu sneered and grabbed Lin Feng's epic war spear. Lin Feng's expression was cold. If you weren't injured, I wouldn't have been able to do anything to you. But you're injured, and your fighting strength has decreased greatly. I can definitely kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, the Book of the Dead flew out. The spirits inside the Book of the Dead didn't come out. Although they didn't come out, their strength was gathered together. Under Yan's lead, they activated the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead emitted a powerful chi of the dead. It was very gloomy and terrifying. The countless runes on the Book of the Dead seemed to come alive. They kept twisting and turning. The Book of the Dead violently flew towards the blood-colored Pangu. Bang! The Book of the Dead hit the blood-colored Pangu, and the blood-colored Pangu was sent flying. Lin Feng rushed forward and swept his spear at the blood-colored Pangu. His spear was so powerful that it could even shatter the void. The blood-colored Pangu reacted extremely quickly. He stretched out his hand to block Lin Feng's spear. But at that moment, the blood-colored Pangu couldn't block the Book of the Dead's attack. The Book of the Dead attacked the blood-colored Pangu again. Bang! The blood-colored Panga's body exploded. Lin Feng took out Heaven Fire and used it to envelop the blood-colored Panga's evil will. Let me out! That evil thought began to struggle and roar continuously. But Lin Feng didn't pay any attention to it. Lin Feng burned the evil thoughts of the bloody Pangu into ashes with his heavenly fire. When the others saw this, they couldn't help but shiver. Lin Feng was really too terrifying. He made them tremble with fear. Lin Feng took the Book of the Dead. He ignored the others and quickly flew down the mountain. Chapter 55, 62. Fortunately, that kid didn't attack us. Otherwise, we'd be dead. Yeah, that kid is really terrifying. I wonder where he came from. Many people started to discuss. However, Lin Feng couldn't hear their discussion anymore. Lin Feng left Panga Mountain without a hitch. As for the young woman, Lin Feng didn't see her. He wondered if she had left. He had obtained Panga's orthodoxy. He had also killed his great enemy, Huangfu Qingtian. Lin Feng was in a good mood. Lin Feng planned to digest the opportunities he had obtained. Lin Feng flew out of Pangu Mystic Domain. On the way, he saw the masked woman. He didn't know what she was looking for, but it was obvious that she wasn't after the things left behind by Pangu. It was normal for there to be other things in Pangu Mystic Domain. The masked woman's identity was a mystery, but Lin Feng wasn't interested in finding out her identity. After flying out of Pangu Mystic Domain, Lin Feng left the area where Pangu Mystic Domain was located. He found an isolated island. Then he opened up a cave residence on the island and entered it. Lin Feng took out the storage rings of the Sky Region Sage King and Huangfu Qingtian. He wanted to see what was in their rings. After all, they both had extraordinary backgrounds, especially the Sky Region Sage King, who was so powerful. Perhaps there were many extraordinary things in there. Lin Feng probed Huangfu Qingtian's storage ring with his divine will. Lin Feng searched for a while and found that there were many good things in Huangfu Qingtian's storage ring. There were all kinds of high-grade immortal stones piled up like mountains. Apart from that, there were over 100 immortal artifacts as well. There were all kinds of natural treasures, immortal iron, and immortal stones. Huangfu Qingtian's luck was really strong these years. Otherwise, he wouldn't have obtained so many good things. Unfortunately, although there were many good things, there weren't many that could really pique Lin Feng's interest. There wasn't a single treasure that could make Lin Feng excited. The main reason was that Lin Feng's standards were too high in other people's eyes. Some things were extremely rare and precious, but in Lin Feng's eyes, they were extremely ordinary. Lin Feng took Huangfu Qingtian's storage ring. Then, he started to check the storage ring of the Sky Region Sage King. That bastard was a sage from Kunlun Universe. Lin Feng inspected the ring with his godly awareness. There were all sorts of things in it. There were enough things. Lin Feng was mainly looking for important treasures. Lin Feng had indeed seen something special. Lin Feng took it out. It was a painting. It was a painting of a man. The man was standing in the forest with his back to the world. Who is this? Lin Feng felt that the painting was extraordinary. The painting wasn't a magic treasure. However, the painting gave people a very extraordinary feeling. The main reason was that the man in the painting who had his back facing the world was too extraordinary. The man gave people a very special feeling, but Lin Feng couldn't tell what it was. Lin Feng tried to use his godly awareness to inspect the painting, but when Lin Feng's mind came into contact with the painting, Lin Feng's mind was devoured. Strange. It was really strange. This painting could actually devour divine will. Lin Feng tried to refine it with his blood. Lin Feng's blood was absorbed by the painting, but strangely, Lin Feng couldn't refine the painting with his blood. The painting hid many secrets, but it couldn't be explored. Lin Feng could only keep the painting. He would find a way to explore the secrets of the painting in the future. Lin Feng also kept the storage ring of the Sky Region Sage King. Then, Lin Feng took out the 4 things left behind by Pangu. Lin Feng successfully refined the sky-splitting axe. A smile appeared on his face. After refining an ancient weapon-grade treasure, his mood became much better. Then, Lin Feng looked at the remaining 3 things. Chapter 55-63. The remaining 3 items were the ancient bluestone book, the black jade token, and the crystal bead. Lin Feng suspected that the ancient bluestone book recorded the Pangu Immortal Sutra. In fact, Lin Feng had already cultivated 14 types of Immortal Sutras. If he could obtain the Pangu Immortal Sutra, he would have 15 types of Immortal Sutras. Why was Lin Feng so powerful? Let's see how many 3,000 great Tao, top-notch divine abilities, and ancient Immortal Sutras Lin Feng cultivated. If Lin Feng's combat strength wasn't strong, then it would be strange. Lin Feng's spiritual will invaded the ancient bluestone book. After carefully searching, Lin Feng's face immediately revealed a shocked expression. The ancient bluestone book recorded the Pangu Immortal Sutra. What surprised Lin Feng wasn't just the Pangu Immortal Sutra, but the last paragraph of the Pangu Immortal Sutra. The more one wanted to transcend, the first thing one had to do was recultivate. These 8 words seemed to record the method of transcendence. If one wanted to transcend, one had to cultivate again. Lin Feng suddenly thought of his father. He had recultivated many times, which was why he was so heaven-defying. His father walked the path of recultivation, and even the core divine ability that his father created was a recultivation-type immortal technique. Could it be for the final transcendence? Lin Feng's expression became uncertain. The sentence recorded at the end of the Pangu Immortal Sutra pointed out a cultivation path. However, there was no specific method. The path of recultivation isn't suitable for me. Lin Feng couldn't help but frown. If he broke through to the peak of the sage realm and wanted to complete transcendence, Lin Feng still felt that the path of recultivation wasn't suitable for him. Lin Feng didn't want to sever his cultivation and recultivate. Perhaps he could find another path to complete his self-transcendence. However, Lin Feng was only at the Tao Immortal Realm now, so he didn't seem to be in a hurry to consider this matter. He would take it one step at a time. Lin Feng memorized the contents of the Pangu Immortal Sutra in his mind. Lin Feng was in a rather good mood now that he had finally obtained the 15th Immortal Scripture. After putting away the ancient book, Lin Feng took out the Black Jade token. He carefully observed the Black Jade token and found that there were countless mysterious runes on it. He didn't know what this Black Jade token was. Lin Feng's spiritual sense invaded the Black Jade token. Then Lin Feng felt his spiritual sense being pulled into a mysterious world. That mysterious world was unimaginably ancient, and in the depths of that mysterious world, there was an unimaginably huge dragon that was chained up in chains. That giant dragon was on the verge of death. Ancestral dragon. Lin Feng's face revealed a shocked expression, although he had never seen the ancestor dragon before. However, Lin Feng was certain that the dragon that was locked up was the progenitor dragon. In this epic, only 3 progenitor dragons were born. The progenitor dragons were more powerful than the true dragons. They were equivalent to the true dragon's ancestors. Lin Feng had always thought that the 3 progenitor dragons had fallen. He didn't expect to see such a scene in the Jade token. Who's spying on this place? Suddenly, a cold voice was heard. Then, a pair of blood-red eyes appeared in the sky. Those blood-red eyes looked at Lin Feng. When Lin Feng saw those blood-red eyes, he felt like he was about to fall into an endless abyss. Roar! At that moment, the progenitor dragon's roar came from the depths. Lin Feng was awakened. His spiritual sense quickly retreated from that world. Lin Feng broke out in cold sweat. That's too scary. Lin Feng's expression was solemn. He had almost met with disaster just now. Moreover, he had almost met with disaster just by sensing that mysterious world with the Jade token. That world, where was it? The progenitor dragons were imprisoned in that world. What was going on? Lin Feng's expression was uncertain. Back then, did Pangu want to save the progenitor dragons? Even he couldn't do it. In the end, he was reincarnated into an even more powerful existence. That was the primeval Lord of Heaven. Why didn't the primeval Lord of Heaven take these things away? Could it be that he wanted to sever his ties with the mortal world? Perhaps it was possible. Lin Feng put the black jade token away for the time being. Sometimes, without enough power, there were some things that couldn't be done even if one wanted to. For example, exploring the place where the progenitor dragons were imprisoned. This was something that Lin Feng wanted to do, but couldn't do. He could only think about it when he was stronger in the future. Lin Feng looked at the last item, the crystal bead. He didn't know what it was. Lin Feng studied it carefully. He realized that there seemed to be something sealed in the crystal bead. This made Lin Feng extremely surprised. His spiritual sense came into contact with the crystal bead. Soon, Lin Feng sensed a lot of information. His face revealed a surprised expression. The thing sealed in the crystal bead was actually Pangu's mark. This was something that Pangu left behind for his successor. Before Pangu's corpse was decomposed, he sealed part of his cultivation in the mark. Pangu's mark completed a transformation over the long years. For example, now, Pangu's mark was no longer as simple as an ordinary mark. Pangu's mark could continuously improve as its owner's cultivation increased. It would become stronger and stronger. However, the prerequisite was that someone could refine Pangu's mark. If Pangu's mark was taken out, if a cultivator failed to refine it, Pangu's mark would eventually dissipate. Refining Pangu's mark was definitely an extremely difficult thing. There was a high chance that a cultivator wouldn't be able to withstand the violent power of Pangu's mark and would directly explode and die. However, this was nothing to Lin Feng. If he couldn't even refine Pangu's mark, Lin Feng would have lived in vain all these years. Lin Feng broke the crystal bead and began to refine the Pangu's mark inside. The power of Pangu's mark was indeed extremely violent. It even wanted to destroy Lin Feng's body. However, Pangu's mark couldn't do that. In the end, Lin Feng managed to refine Pangu's mark. Lin Feng's face lit up with joy. The golden figurine, the sacred bone, the ruler's armor, the magic lotus, the stone golem clone. All of them could provide Lin Feng with powerful fighting strength. Now that he had Pangu's mark, Lin Feng's fighting strength had increased even more. This was naturally a good thing. Lin Feng immediately came out of seclusion. The Xianyuan ancient starship flew above the sea. Lin Feng cultivated inside the Xianyuan ancient starship. He was comprehending the Pangu immortal scripture. 5 days later, a woman flew over from afar and fell on Lin Feng's Xianyuan ancient starship. Lin Feng woke up and walked out. He came to the side of the unconscious woman and helped her up. To Lin Feng's surprise, this woman turned out to be the masked woman from before. The masked woman seemed to have sensed something. She opened her eyes and slammed her palm towards Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng reacted quickly and grabbed her wrist. Chapter 5564. Calm down, Lin Feng said. It's you. When the masked woman saw Lin Feng, she was astonished. But in the next moment, she involuntarily coughed up a mouthful of blood. Her face turned deathly pale, and she fell into Lin Feng's arms, unconscious. When Lin Feng saw the unconscious masked woman, he couldn't help but frown. The woman's cultivation was terrifying, and she had a powerful treasure to protect her. She had entered the Pangu's secret dimension to search for something, and now she was seriously injured. Had she been injured by someone? Lin Feng couldn't figure it out. Sometimes there were things that didn't need to be understood. Lin Feng carried the woman into the cabin. Lin Feng naturally knew that helping the woman might bring him some trouble, but Lin Feng didn't care. The masked woman had helped him before, and she was quite kind-hearted. He couldn't just stand by and watch her die, right? The Xianyuan ancient starship continued flying above the sea. The night was dark, and a gloomy aura filled the air. Asterisk whoosh whoosh whoosh. Asterisk black chi surged and flew towards the Xianyuan ancient starship from all directions. Lin Feng didn't know what kind of existence was hiding in the black chi, but he could see the black chi flying towards him from outside. Because of that, the Xianyuan ancient starship stopped. As the saying went, those who came didn't come with good intentions. The other party had arrived. Lin Feng just had to deal with it. A cold voice came from the darkness. "Boy, hand her over, and we can spare your life." Lin Feng said indifferently, "The aura of the netherworld. Are you all from the netherworld? You're quite experienced and knowledgeable. You can actually recognize us at a glance. Since you know who we are, you should cooperate with us honestly. The netherworld is a colossus, and I'm sure you don't want to provoke them," said the existence with a sneer. "You're right. Which force are you from the netherworld?" asked Lin Feng. "You're asking too many questions. It's best not to ask things you shouldn't ask." The existence in the darkness said coldly, "Hee hee." Lin Feng coldly laughed as he said, "You came here to ask for someone, yet you told me not to ask anything. How laughable. This woman is now under my protection. As for you, you can scram." "What did you say? Brat, are you courting death?" Cold voices suddenly sounded. It was obvious that many people were infuriated by Lin Feng's words. Lin Feng asked, "You don't understand human language? You're courting death." Streams of black chi quickly flew towards the ancient starship Xianyuan. Namo Amit. Suddenly, Lin Feng put his palms together, looking solemn. Meanwhile, an ancient Buddha appeared in the void. That ancient Buddha also put his palms together. Dazzling Buddha, light formed. It illuminated the world. Dark night. In an instant, it was as bright as day. When the Buddha's light shone down, sizzling sounds of burning could be heard. "Damn it, this brat is proficient in Buddhist techniques." "Retreat." The nether realm cultivators shouted in deep voices. Hiss. Suddenly, the ancient Buddha opened his mouth. A terrifying sound wave spread out. This was the swastika mantra of the six-syllable mantra. Lin Feng used the ancient Buddha's mouth to activate it. The swastika mantra was ranked first among the six-syllable mantras, so its power was naturally terrifying. One had to know that countless Buddhist techniques were comprehended from the six-syllable mantras. Therefore, the six-syllable mantra was an unimaginably terrifying technique. It was even more effective against the underworld cultivators. It's the six-syllable mantra. Some of the underworld cultivators shouted in fear. Their cultivation was tyrannical, and they were underworld cultivators. Their life characteristics were relatively unique. So many techniques couldn't harm them. However, they were greatly restrained by Taoist and Buddhist techniques. If they encountered Taoist and Buddhist techniques, it would be very troublesome. The six-syllable mantra was one of the most terrifying Buddhist techniques. It was naturally very effective against the underworld cultivators. Bang, 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 accompanied by the sound of bodies exploding. The underworld cultivators' bodies directly exploded, and they died on the spot. The remaining few stronger underworld cultivators escaped, but they didn't dare to stay. They escaped extremely quickly and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. The next day, the veiled woman opened her eyes and found herself lying on a bed. Thinking about what happened yesterday, she couldn't help but feel slightly shocked. She quickly checked her body. She knew how attractive she was to men. Although Lin Feng didn't look like a bad person, he couldn't control himself. Who knew if she wouldn't be able to control herself and would do something to him? What if she was taken advantage of because of this? If he took advantage of her, she wouldn't be able to cry even if she wanted to. Fortunately, the veiled woman didn't find anything special. She even found that the veil on her face was still on. After washing up and putting on a clean veil, the veiled woman walked out. When she came out, she saw the young cultivator standing on the deck overlooking the sea. The veiled woman walked out and bowed to Lin Feng, saying, "Thank you for saving me." Lin Feng said, "Didn't you help me before? We don't owe each other anything." The veiled woman said, "My name is Bai Suxin. What's your name?" "I'm Lin Feng, Sinrealm's master." Lin Feng, Bai Suxin asked uncertainly. She had naturally heard of Sinrealm's master, but in Bai Suxin's opinion, there should be a huge difference in cultivation between Sinrealm's master and this human young master. She couldn't be sure. Lin Feng said, "That's me. I never thought that I would meet the famous Sinrealm's master here. Moreover, he's so strong. I heard that before Huangfu Qingtian obtained Panga's orthodoxy, he was killed by his enemy. It seems like you're the one who killed Huangfu Qingtian and obtained Panga's orthodoxy." Bai Suxin said. Lin Feng said, "I have to say that you're really smart. However, it's better for women to be a little stupid." Bai Suxin didn't deny it. She then said, "I want to ask you for a favor. I've already repaid the favor you owe me, and I don't want to get involved in the Netherworld's affairs." Lin Feng said. Bai Suxin said, "If you can help me, I can give you an immortal sutra's inheritance." Lin Feng was surprised. He then said, "Deal." Bai Suxin revealed a smile. Lin Feng asked, "What's the immortal sutra's inheritance?" "The necromancer's scripture." Bai Suxin said, Chapter 55-65. When Lin Feng heard the words death scripture, a surprised expression appeared on his face. The death scripture was an immortal level inheritance that the people of Death Island in the deathly silent sea had cultivated. Lin Feng remembered that the island had been completely destroyed, yet this woman knew about the death scripture. It was truly shocking. Lin Feng looked at Bai Suxin and said, "So, you're the successor of the Death Island? This means that some people were lucky enough to escape from the islands of the dead souls." "Yes." Bai Suxin did not refute and directly admitted it. This surprised Lin Feng. It seemed that Bai Suxin was not a simple woman. If it were someone else, they would not have admitted their identity so openly. Lin Feng knew a little about the Death Island, but he did not know much about it. He only knew that the people of the Death Island had obtained something, and news of it had been leaked. They had been besieged by many forces, and in the end, the Death Island had been destroyed. The higher-ups of the Death Island had cursed the island before they died. They said that all cultivators who entered the deathly silent sea would die miserably. In Lin Feng's opinion, this legend was probably nonsense. "What do you want me to do for you?" Lin Feng asked. "Follow me to the Death Island." Bai Suxin said, "Wasn't the Death Island already destroyed?" Lin Feng asked, puzzled. Bai Suxin said, "Back then, the Dead Soul Island actually sank to the bottom of the sea. However, no one knows where it sank because those people who climbed onto the Dead Soul Island were also trapped on the Dead Soul Island. In the end, they sank together. However, there are some tokens that can lead cultivators to the Death Sea region, and I found such a token." Lin Feng said, "You went to the Pangu's secret dimension to look for this token?" "Yes." Bai Suxin nodded. Asked Lin Feng. "The Pangu mysterious world appeared before the Dead Souls Island. How could the talisman be in the Pangu mysterious world?" Bai Suxin said, "Actually, that keepsake was found by a senior of my clan. However, that senior entered the Pangu mystery dimension and died there So the keepsake was lost. I see. Lin Feng nodded. What about the Netherworld cultivators? What's up with them? Lin Feng asked. Bai Suxin said, they're also looking for the token. Lin Feng said, so you've been targeted by them? Bai Suxin replied, I obtained the keepsake one step ahead of them and was attacked by them. Asked Lin Feng, back in the days, what did you obtain on the Dead Souls Island? Why did so many influential groups covet it? Now, even the Netherworld cultivators have gotten wind of it and are eyeing it covetously. I'm really curious. Bai Suxin said, to be honest, I really don't know what it is. The only thing I'm sure of is that it's still on the Death Island. Let's go to the Death Island and search around to see if we can find it. If we can, we'll know when the time comes. Lin Feng said, since I've agreed to explore the Death Island with you, can you teach me the Death Scripture now? Bai Suxin said, of course, there's no problem with teaching you the Death Scripture, but the Death Scripture I have is only an incomplete one. The complete Death Scripture is also on the island. Lin Feng couldn't help but frown slightly. Bai Suxin said, I'm telling you the truth. I'm not lying to you. Lin Feng nodded. He was quite a good judge of character, and he felt that Bai Suxin shouldn't be lying to him. Said Lin Feng, first, give me the incomplete version of the Death Scripture. I want to see how mysterious it is. I hope I'll find the complete version on Death Island, said Lin Feng. Sure, Bai Suxin said. Bai Suxin said, as she took out a jade tube. Then, she imprinted the Death Scripture inside the jade tube. Lin Feng took the jade tube from Bai Suxin. Where are we going now? Lin Feng asked. Bai Suxin said, to the west. Lin Feng nodded. Then, he changed the direction of the ancient starship Xianyuan. The ancient starship Xianyuan quickly flew toward the west. The two of them didn't stay outside. Bai Suxin's injuries hadn't recovered yet, so she went back to recuperate. As for Lin Feng, he went to comprehend the Death Scripture. 2 days later, Lin Feng discovered that the seawater had turned blood red. It was extremely strange. However, when Lin Feng took a closer look, he discovered that the seawater had returned to normal. It was really strange. Bai Suxin walked out and said, we should be arriving soon. Lin Feng asked, is this the place where the Death Island sank? Bai Suxin nodded and said, it should be this area. You should have noticed that something was wrong earlier, right? Yes, Lin Feng replied. The seawater is actually a normal color, but we sometimes discover that it's actually blood red. Actually, it's not blood red. It's only because our minds are affected. Bai Suxin said, that's right. You're saying that there's a powerful magnetic field here. Lin Feng asked, that should be the case. We should be able to discover it soon. Bai Suxin said. Lin Feng was right. It didn't take long for Lin Feng to discover that something was amiss. They were lost in the sea. This was because the magnetic field here was too powerful, and it severely affected the Xuanyuan's positioning. Once a cultivator got lost, it would be very frightening. If they were trapped here without being able to leave, they might even die. Therefore, regardless of whether it was the starry sky world or the sea world, encountering a magnetic field would be very troublesome. Lin Feng looked at Bai Suxin and asked, where's your keepsake? You can take it out now. Bai Suxin nodded and took out the keepsake she had obtained earlier. The keepsake she had obtained was actually a comb. Moreover, it was a comb made of white jade rhinoceros horn. When she saw Lin Feng's astonished expression, Bai Suxin smiled and said, do you find this keepsake of mine very strange? Lin Feng smiled bitterly and nodded. He said, I've seen all kinds of keepsakes, but this is the first time I've seen someone forge a keepsake in the shape of a comb. Bai Suxin said, the person who left this keepsake behind might be a female cultivator from the Death Island. Bai Suxin activated the comb. To Lin Feng's surprise, the comb was not only a keepsake, but it was also a powerful magic treasure. Chapter 5566. The comb flew out, and Lin Feng and Bai Suxin quickly followed. Lin Feng put away the ancient spaceship Xianyuan. Then he and Bai Suxin followed the comb and quickly flew forward. When they arrived at a region of the sea, the comb entered it. Lin Feng and Bai Suxin were overjoyed. Had they arrived at their destination, they did not hesitate and entered the region of the sea and quickly chased after the comb. They quickly dove down. As they dove deeper, Lin Feng could clearly feel a terrifying magnetic field enveloping his body, and it seemed to be affecting his mind. The situation was very bad. Fortunately, Lin Feng had powerful means and successfully dispelled the magnetic field's influence on him. Bai Suxin's means were also extraordinary. She also dispelled the magnetic field's influence on her. The two continued to dive. Lin Feng said, "The magnetic field is so powerful. It seems like we're about to reach the Undead Isles. I wonder what the Undead Isles look like now. It can't be that evil ghosts are everywhere, right?" In truth, Lin Feng hoped that such a situation would happen. It would be best if a few powerful evil ghosts were born. At that time, he could collect all those terrifying existences into the Book of the Dead. Currently, there were 56 saint-level undead creatures in the Book of the Dead. Lin Feng felt that it was far from enough. The more undead creatures there were in the Book of the Dead, the better. It was very important to him. Bai Suxin naturally did not know about the Book of the Dead. She rolled her eyes at Lin Feng and said, "You're such a jinx. We should pray that this trip will go smoothly. I don't want to see those powerful undead creatures. They'll definitely be a huge problem." Lin Feng did not explain anything. If there were no powerful undead creatures, then so be it. However, if there were powerful undead creatures at that time, I'll let you know how powerful this young master is. Maybe you can be at ease when the time comes. Let's gallop. The two continued to follow the comb as it dived deeper. For hours later, a huge whirlpool appeared in his line of sight. After seeing the whirlpool, Lin Feng couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly. That vortex! It was extremely terrifying and contained a power that could destroy everything. Once sucked into the vortex, the cultivator's body could be instantly torn to pieces. However, that comb had flown into the whirlpool. It seemed that the Dead Soul Island had sunk into that whirlpool. Although that whirlpool was extremely terrifying, Lin Feng's methods were powerful, and it shouldn't be a problem for him to resolve the threat brought about by the whirlpool. The main problem was Bai Suxin. Lin Feng didn't know if Bai Suxin had a way to deal with the threat of the vortex. Lin Feng asked, "Can you deal with that whirlpool?" Bai Suxin replied, "No problem." After saying that, Bai Suxin took out an umbrella. It was a defensive Dharma treasure. Bai Suxin opened the umbrella. Millions of rays of divine light instantly poured down. From the umbrella, the divine light enveloped Bai Suxin's body. As for Lin Feng, he took out his ruler's armor. The two of them entered the whirlpool, and a terrifying tearing force surged toward them. The tearing force attacking Lin Feng was blocked by Lin Feng's ruler's armor. The tearing force attacking Bai Suxin was neutralized by Bai Suxin's magic treasure. The two of them passed through the whirlpool and appeared in a huge space. There was actually another world under the whirlpool. "Look," Bai Suxin pointed at a place in the distance. Bai Suxin pointed in the distance. Lin Feng looked over and saw a gigantic island. The island was shrouded in an endless aura of death. Lin Feng also sensed that the power of a curse enveloped the outer region of the island. That island should be the island of dead souls. Bai Suxin put away the comb and said, "We've finally found the Dead Soul Island." However, how are we going to enter the island now? The reason she said that was because the Dead Soul Island was truly extraordinary. The island of the dead souls was emitting a strong power of death and curse. The power of death was nothing to him. The most terrifying thing was the curse energy. No matter when, one could not be careless when encountering the curse energy because it was too strange. The curse power was simply too bizarre. If you dared to underestimate the curse power, you would be in trouble. One might suffer a calamity. Lin Feng said, "It seems that the cultivators of the Dead Soul Island really did set up a curse." Bai Suxin replied, "That's right, they did indeed cast a curse. Their curse trapped everyone on the undead island. That's because they were the enemies of the Dead Soul Island. They killed so many people for their own selfish desires. The Dead Soul Island did not harm those innocent people. But now, the Dead Soul Island has become a notorious power. It's truly lamentable." Lin Feng knew the truth behind Bai Suxin's words. There was a rumor in the outside world that the cultivators of the Dead Soul Island had set up a curse when they died. Any cultivator who entered the deathly still sea would die there. The deathly still sea was incomparably dangerous and terrifying. Thus, many cultivators who entered the deathly still sea had died there. And so, the rumor that the Dead Soul Island had set up a curse gradually became a reality. In fact, even though the Dead Soul Island had been destroyed, they did not set up such a vicious curse. Lin Feng said, "History is written by the victors, while the Dead Soul Island is a loser. That's why many rumors are unfavorable to the Dead Soul Island." "Yes." Bai Suxin nodded. The two of them flew toward the Dead Soul Island. They arrived outside the Dead Soul Island. The Dead Soul Island was enveloped by the death energy and curse energy, but it also had extremely powerful restrictions. However, Lin Feng had the stone scripture. He could ignore the restrictions. "How do you think we should enter?" Bai Suxin frowned slightly. She was worried that the curse energy would invade her body. That was an extremely troublesome matter. Lin Feng said, "I've cultivated the Great Curse technique. Perhaps I can use it to resist the invasion of the curse energy. I'll bring you in later." "All right, then I'll have to trouble you, young master," Bai Suxin said. "You're welcome," Lin Feng said with a smile. He hugged Bai Suxin's slim waist. It was so comfortable to hug an ant's waist. Bai Suxin's beautiful face was slightly red. Being in such close contact with Lin Feng while she was awake made her feel very shy. Lin Feng did not think too much about it. His thoughts were all on the Dead Soul Island. Thus, even though he was hugging a beautiful woman, he did not have any evil thoughts. Chapter 55-67. Lin Feng hugged Bai Suxin and flew towards the Dead Soul Islands. When they were close to the Dead Soul Islands, Lin Feng activated the stone scripture, and the restrictions were no longer a threat. Bai Suxin's umbrella-shaped magic treasure was still being used by her, so her body was still surrounded by divine light. Although the divine light could not block the curse power, it could block the death power. Bai Suxin did not have to worry about the death power invading her body. At this moment, the powerful curse power surged towards the two of them. Lin Feng didn't dare waste time. He hastily used his Great Cursing technique. When the Great Curse technique was activated, the curse power was actually blocked by Lin Feng's Great Curse technique. Lin Feng's face could not help but reveal a happy expression. As expected of the Great Curse technique, it was indeed awesome. Lin Feng took this opportunity to quickly rush into the Dead Soul Islands with Bai Suxin. The curse power could not be felt inside the Dead Soul Islands. It seemed that the curse power was concentrated in the outer regions of the islands. Its purpose was to prevent the cultivators who invaded the Dead Soul Islands from escaping. Lin Feng let go of Bai Suxin. Bai Suxin blushed slightly and said, "Thank you, young master." Lin Feng thought to himself, if you really want to thank me, then let me hug you for a while. Of course, he did not directly say this out loud. When the words reached his mouth, they became something like this. Fairy, you're welcome. The Dead Soul Islands were covered in a dense forest. Lin Feng and Bai Suxin rushed into the depths of the forest. After entering the dense forest, they saw many corpses. They were densely packed together and could not be counted. Who knew how many people had died in the past? It seemed that, in the past, the factions that attacked the Dead Soul Islands must have mobilized a lot of experts. Lin Feng inspected some of the corpses. He discovered that many of the corpses had the curse power invading them. It seemed that the deaths of these people were directly related to the curse on the Dead Soul Islands. When she looked at the corpses, Bai Suxin revealed a hateful gaze. Many of Bai Suxin's ancestors had died because of these people. Even though countless years had passed, this kind of blood feud was hard to forget. The two of them went deeper and deeper. After they reached the depths, they saw a large number of dilapidated palaces, large numbers of temples, and so on. Those places should be where the Dead Soul Island used to live. It was just that in the battle back then, these places had already been destroyed. Lin Feng suddenly felt a chill on his back. He turned around to look. Whoosh! He didn't know if it was an illusion, but Lin Feng felt a shadow flash behind him and disappear. Damn, what's going on? Lin Feng's mind couldn't help but tremble slightly. Given his powerful cultivation base, he would be able to do so. If someone were to appear here, it would be impossible for them to not sense the other party. However, what was the actual situation? However, Lin Feng didn't discover anything. This was too terrifying. What's wrong? Bai Suxin looked at Lin Feng and asked. Lin Feng asked, didn't you notice anything earlier? What have you discovered? Bai Suxin asked. Lin Feng smiled bitterly. Was it an illusion? It wasn't a good thing to have such an illusion in a place like this, but he really didn't find anything earlier. Lin Feng said, it's fine. Maybe I sensed wrongly. The two of them entered the ruins. Corpses were piled up like a mountain. As they walked, Bai Suxin couldn't help but cry. Women were more emotional, especially this place. For Bai Suxin, it was indeed a sad place. There were so many corpses. Many of them were Bai Suxin's ancestors. After they died, they couldn't even be buried in peace. Bai Suxin was naturally very sad. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be in a good mood. Lin Feng originally wanted to persuade Bai Suxin, but after thinking about it, he didn't. Lin Feng really didn't know how to persuade her. Should he say something like, my condolences? Who would be able to restrain their grief when faced with the tragic deaths of their clansmen? The two of them walked through the ruins. They went to many places, including the ancestral hall, the treasury, and other places. However, they didn't find anything. The treasures in the treasury were also gone. Most likely, the people who escaped back then took the treasures with them. It's really strange that we didn't find anything. Lin Feng frowned. He felt that there should be something here. Lin Feng looked at Bai Suxin and asked, did you find anything? Bai Suxin shook her head. She wasn't in a particularly good mood. Lin Feng knew that Bai Suxin was sad, but now wasn't the time to be sad. The most important thing was to find the opportunity here and leave this damned place as soon as possible. Lin Feng kept feeling that something was wrong, so he didn't want to stay here for long. Lin Feng said, try circulating your bloodline. See if you can sense anything. Bai Suxin nodded. She also knew that now wasn't the time to be sad. She began circulating her bloodline. When Bai Suxin's bloodline started circulating, something shocking happened. Boom, boom, boom. 8 pillars of light soared into the sky. After the 8 pillars of light appeared, countless runes interweaved, and the area turned into a huge formation. The piles of corpses there were instantly reduced to ashes. Lin Feng and Bai Suxin quickly flew toward that area, and they saw that there was an altar there. Waves of death energy surged from the altar. The power of death had completely sealed off the entire altar. 8 gates, necromancy formation. It's actually such a formation. The person who set up such a formation will never be able to reincarnate. It seems like this formation must have been set up by your ancestors to deal with those invaders. Lin Feng couldn't help but sigh. The dead soul, had been too miserable back then. Bai Suxin nodded. She couldn't help but feel sad when she thought of the tragic experiences of her ancestors. At that moment, something shocking happened. Corpses appeared on the altar one after another. Lin Feng gasped when he saw the corpses. There were a total of 49 corpses. It seemed that they were the upper echelons of the dead soul. 7 by 7, 49. 9 was the ultimate number, and it meant great misfortune. Lin Feng finally understood why those people had been trapped here. In order to kill those invaders, the people of the dead soul, didn't even leave themselves a way out. Suddenly, Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. He saw something. The cultivator at the front was holding it in his hand. It was a palm-sized green stone tablet. Could it be? Lin Feng thought of a possibility. Back then, those people had schemed and even destroyed the dead soul, for the sake of that greenstone tablet. But what was the origin of that greenstone tablet? What secrets did it record? Why were those factions so crazy about it? Lin Feng was puzzled. Chapter 5568. How can we obtain the green steel from that ancestor? Bai Suxin asked. She could tell that the tablet was extraordinary, but obtaining it wasn't going to be an easy task. The 8 gates undead formation was too terrifying, and it was too difficult to resist. Furthermore, there were some differences between the 8 gates undead formation and other formations. Other formations would grow weaker as time passed, but the 8 gates undead formation was different. However, the 8 gates undead formation was a little special. So many people had died here, and the powerful death energy had been nourishing the 8 gates undead formation for a long time. That was why the 8 gates undead formation was so terrifying, and it was even more powerful than it had been in the past. Anyone who got too close to it might die. Bai Suxin knew how terrifying the 8 gates undead formation was, so she didn't know how to retrieve the tablet. Lin Feng said, "I can give it a try." "You have a way." Bai Suxin's eyes lit up. Lin Feng nodded. He then said, "I just don't know if it's possible. We'll find out soon enough." Lin Feng's method was to use the stone scripture to enter the 8 gates undead formation. Ordinary formations wouldn't be able to do anything to the stone scripture, but the 8 gates undead formation was too strange. That was why Lin Feng was a little nervous, as he didn't know how effective the stone scripture would be. Lin Feng activated the stone scripture and walked towards the 8 gates undead formation. When Lin Feng arrived outside the 8 gates undead formation, a terrifying wave of energy surged out. The 8 gates undead formation immediately released a terrifying attack towards Lin Feng. Just as the attack was about to hit Lin Feng's stone scripture suddenly released waves of terrifying devouring power. The devouring power directly devoured the attack from the 8 gates undead formation. Lin Feng couldn't help but look happy. Even though the 8 doors deployment spell was powerful, it was still very powerful. Although the 8 gates undead formation was powerful, his stone scripture was even more powerful. Lin Feng entered the 8 gates undead formation and held the green tablet in his hand. However, at that moment, something terrifying happened. A large amount of destructive power surged out of the Eight Gates Undead Formation. The Eight Gates Necromancer Formation was about to self-destruct. This scared Lin Feng to death. If the Eight Gates Necromancer Formation self-destructed, that would be disastrous. Lin Feng quickly rushed outside. The Eight-Gate Necromancy deployment spell wanted to trap Lin Feng, but it didn't work. Lin Feng successfully rushed out. A relieved expression appeared on his face. He had finally escaped. It had been too dangerous. Lin Feng rushed out of the Eight Gates Undead Formation. The Eight Gates Necromancer Formation self-destructed in an instant, along with the corpses of the cultivators. Lin Feng wiped his sweat. Fortunately, he had come out in advance. Otherwise, he would have been reduced to ashes. I've taken it out. Let's go. Lin Feng said. Bai Suxin was also very happy. She quickly nodded her head and was about to leave with Lin Feng when a gloomy aura suddenly filled the area. A large amount of ghost qi surged. Within the ghost qi, there was a frightening aura. The Netherworld's people are here again. Bai Suxin's expression became unsightly. Lin Feng nodded. He couldn't help but frown, slightly. The other party had clearly followed him and Bai Suxin. They hadn't noticed them before, which meant that the leader of the Netherworld's people was an extremely terrifying existence. Lin Feng said, "Let's wait and see." "Boy, you're very strong. You were able to kill so many of the Netherworld's experts. Even I admire you a little." A gloomy voice came from within the ghost qi. "How should I address you?" Lin Feng asked. "The Ninth Ghost Lord." The being within the ghost qi replied. Lin Feng's pupils shrank when he heard that. The Ninth Ghost Lord was definitely a titled god, and he was the most powerful titled god. This guy was from the same era as the Ninth Human Emperor, and he was still alive. Lin Feng knew that only the first layer of the Netherworld was open. The other layers had been sealed. It seemed that the Ninth Ghost Lord had also been sealed previously and had just broken out of the seal, right? "I really didn't think that there would be someone as strong as you in this era," Lin Feng said. "Hee, I've only managed to survive until now." The Ninth Ghost Lord said, "Your voice is loud and clear, and you're full of vigor. You're not just surviving. I think we can sit down and talk." Lin Feng said, "What's there to talk about between us?" The Ninth Ghost Lord said, "How about we fight against the apocalypse battle together?" Lin Feng said, "Talk my ass. I won't participate in the apocalypse battle. I just want to live. The lives of others have nothing to do with me." The Ninth Ghost Lord sneered. Lin Feng said, "Don't say that. This is a great merit." The Ninth Ghost Lord said, "Don't give me this useless talk. Hand over the green stone tablet, and I'll give you a quick death. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead." Lin Feng's eyes darkened, and he said, "Then let's see who will win. Kill them." The Ninth Ghost Lord gave the order, and an endless amount of ghostly qi rushed towards Lin Feng and Bai Suxin. The aura was extremely terrifying. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent as he summoned the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead shone with an endless amount of ghostly energy. Bang, bang, bang. Many of the ghosts hiding in the ghostly qi exploded. The Book of the Dead. The Ninth Ghost Lord was shocked, but then he laughed loudly. "Ha ha ha! I never thought that I would find the Book of the Undead here. What a great opportunity! I'll take both the Book of the Undead and the Cyan Stone Tablet." As soon as he finished speaking, the Ninth Ghost Lord personally attacked. He sent a palm strike towards the Book of the Dead from afar. Bang! That tyrannical slap sent the Book of the Dead flying. "Suppress." The Ninth Ghost Lord shouted coldly, and a ghost mountain condensed in the air. It directly suppressed the Book of the Dead in the air. Lin Feng's expression turned ugly. He didn't dare hesitate, and hurriedly took out his 36 bamboo swords. The 36 bamboo swords quickly attacked the ninth Ghost Lord. "Good fellow, you even forged a powerful young treasure. But your treasure hasn't transformed into a holy weapon, so it can't hurt me." The ninth Ghost Lord sneered and flicked his finger. Clang, clang, clang. A series of collisions rang out, and Lin Feng's 36 bamboo swords were also sent flying. "This is going to be troublesome." Lin Feng's expression became gloomy. "Let's run," Bai Suxin said. Lin Feng smiled bitterly. Right now, they couldn't escape, even if they wanted to. Chapter 55, 69. Escape? How naive. Do you really think you can escape? The ninth Wraith Lord sneered. Lin Feng retorted, "Don't get too cocky. I have my ways to deal with you." Lin Feng took out Panga's axe. Aside from the epic war spear, Panga's axe was the only ancient weapon that he could use easily. As for the other ancient weapons, Lin Feng found it difficult to unleash their full power. Lin Feng wielded Panga's axe and swung it at the ninth Wraith Lord. A thick beam of axe light condensed and appeared in front of the ninth Wraith Lord. The ninth Wraith Lord sneered and flicked his finger. The beam of axe light was shattered. Lin Feng took out the epic war spear, and Panga's axe flew out. In midair, Panga's axe expanded rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, it was over 100 meters long. Its aura was terrifying, and its might was overwhelming. Such a supreme treasure was naturally shocking. Lin Feng followed closely behind. "Panga's axe. Looks like you've inherited Panga's legacy. Take this attack from my Wraith Lord sword." Facing the incoming Pangu axe, the ninth Ghost Lord took out a treasured sword. This treasured sword should be the Wraith Lord sword that he had mentioned before. The ninth Wraith Lord swung his sword at Panga's axe. Clang! The Wraith Lord sword and Panga's axe collided fiercely. Suddenly, an earth-shattering sound was heard. It was as if the void was almost shattered. At this moment, Lin Feng charged forward with the epic war spear in hand. Lin Feng saw the ninth Wraith Lord's appearance clearly. He was skinny, and he looked like he was in his 30s. His face was pale, and his eyes were sinister. This was the ninth Wraith Lord. Go to hell. Lin Feng didn't hold back, and he stabbed his spear at the ninth Wraith Lord. "You're a terrifying figure to be able to kill your way to me, but that's all. Today, I'll let you know how powerful I am." As soon as he finished speaking, a vertical eye appeared on the forehead of the ninth Wraith Lord. The eye of the Wraith Lord. This was an eye that only a Wraith Lord could condense. It was extremely terrifying. The eye of the Wraith Lord shot out billions of beams of deathlight, blasting toward Lin Feng. Not good. Lin Feng's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly summoned his ruler's armor and phoenix shield to defend himself. Bang! The opponent's terrifying attack fiercely bombarded Lin Feng's phoenix shield. Lin Feng was blown away by the explosion. Even though he had the phoenix shield and the Dominator's armor to block that terrifying attack, it was still too late. However, Lin Feng still felt extremely uncomfortable. He felt his qi and blood churn, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The ninth Ghost Lord's expression was indifferent as he charged towards Lin Feng. However, at this moment, the ninth Ghost Lord seemed to have sensed something and looked behind him. A withered old woman appeared behind the ninth Wraith Lord. The old woman sent a palm strike at the ninth Ghost Lord. The ninth Ghost Lord hastily reacted and sent a palm strike at the old woman. Bang! The two sides collided fiercely, and the ninth Ghost Lord was sent flying by the old woman. "Who are you?" The ninth Ghost Lord's expression became extremely solemn. He was a terrifying existence. Even if he attacked hastily, there were very few people who could force him back. However, the old woman had done it. It was truly shocking. Lin Feng and Bai Suxin also looked at the old woman in shock. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Earlier, he had sensed a black shadow flash behind him. However, when he searched carefully, he hadn't found anything. But now, that black shadow was very likely the old woman in front of him. Could it be that the old woman was a cultivator from the Dead Souls Island? When he thought of this, Lin Feng couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Bai Suxin had obviously thought of this possibility as well. She looked at the old woman somewhat excitedly. Could it be one of her ancestors? The old woman's voice was hoarse as she said, "The Netherworld's reach is really long. This is the Yang realm. The Netherworld and the Yang realm should not interfere with each other. This is a rule that has been set since the beginning of this era, right?" The ninth Ghost Lord said, "There is indeed such a rule, and the Netherworld has been abiding by it for many years. However, what time is it now? This is the end of the era. Heaven and earth are crumbling, and the sun and moon are sinking. The heavens and the earth are on the verge of destruction. Heaven and earth are in complete chaos. Who would still abide by those rules?" The ninth Ghost Lord's words made a lot of sense. In an era that was about to be destroyed, everyone was only concerned with preserving their own lives. Naturally, there were fewer and fewer people who followed the rules. One could only imagine how chaotic it would be after a while. Wouldn't the Yang realm be filled with burning, killing, and looting? When that time came, it would definitely be a mess. If the beings of the Netherworld came out again, it would really be a night of 100 ghosts. It would be extremely chaotic. Humph, the old woman snorted coldly and said, "I don't want to say anything else to you. Leave, and I won't make things difficult for you. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless." The ninth Ghost Lord was obviously not someone who could be scared with a few words. After all, the ninth Ghost Lord was really too terrifying. The ninth Ghost Lord said coldly, "It just so happens that I want to experience your techniques." As soon as he finished speaking, the ninth Ghost Lord raised his Ghost Lord sword and attacked the old woman. The old woman stretched out her hand and made a grabbing motion. The comb that Bai Suxin had put away immediately flew out. Seeing the comb fly toward the old woman, Bai Suxin became even more excited. That comb was a keepsake left behind by her ancestor. Now that it was flying toward the old woman, it meant that the old woman was very likely the owner of the comb. This also proved the old woman's identity. At that moment, the comb magic treasure flew in front of the old woman and quickly grew bigger. Under the old woman's control, the comb magic treasure quickly flew toward the ninth Ghost Lord. Clang! The old woman's comb magic treasure collided with the ninth Ghost Lord's Ghost Lord sword. Both sides were evenly matched. However, at that moment, a large amount of death energy surged out from the Isle of Dead Souls and was all devoured by the old woman. After receiving the support of the death energy, the old woman's battle prowess suddenly increased greatly. When she activated the comb magic treasure again, the old woman's battle prowess suddenly increased greatly. When she used the comb magic treasure again, its power also increased greatly. The comb magic treasure collided with the ninth Ghost Lord's Ghost Lord sword again. The ninth Ghost Lord was sent flying. The old woman quickly rushed forward. Bang, bang, bang. 3 consecutive palm strikes landed on the ninth Ghost Lord's chest. Wah! The ninth Ghost Lord could not help but vomit blood. Someone as strong as him. He was actually injured. He was really mad with hatred. "Your life. I want it," the old woman said coldly and quickly rushed toward the ninth Ghost Lord. However, The ninth Ghost Lord did not have the heart to continue fighting. The ninth Ghost Lord did not fight the old woman head-on. Instead, he turned around and fled. Chapter 55-70. The ninth Ghost Lord fled. Lin Feng let out a long sigh. That guy was too terrifying, but the old woman had actually forced him to retreat. It was clear how powerful she was. Senior. Bai Suxin looked at the old woman excitedly. The old woman sighed and said, "It's fate. We shouldn't have met, and if we did, we would have met a calamity." Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat when he heard the old woman's words. Could it be that something bad would happen when the old woman and Bai Suxin met? Bai Suxin's expression changed abruptly. She asked, "Senior, what do you mean by that?" The old woman did not answer Bai Suxin's question. Instead, she said, "It's good that we meet. I'll give you my clan's necromancy scripture." The old woman took out an ancient scripture as she spoke. The ancient scripture flew towards Bai Suxin. It should be the complete necromancy scripture. Bai Suxin accepted the ancient scripture. Lin Feng asked, "Senior, can I ask you something?" The old woman looked at Lin Feng and said, "Ask away. What's so special about this green steel? Why did so many people go crazy over it?" Lin Feng asked curiously. The old woman said, "Rumor has it that someone once gathered all the steels and comprehended some terrifying supreme divine techniques from them. Afterward, those supreme divine techniques were branded onto the green steel." "What? There's such a thing?" Lin Feng's face was filled with disbelief. This piece of news was really too shocking. Someone had actually managed to gather all the steels in history. What a terrifying method. Lin Feng asked, "The method to immortality couldn't have been recorded there, right?" "I don't know. Back then, my clan obtained this thing, but unfortunately, we didn't manage to comprehend its contents." The old woman sighed. How prosperous was the Necromancy Islands back then? It had been destroyed because of the green steel. Even now, the old woman still couldn't let go of this matter. Lin Feng thought to himself, "You guys can't comprehend it, but I can. If I can really comprehend the method to immortality, that'll be awesome. By then, yours truly would never be able to die. Heaven and earth are destroyed, but I am immortal. Epics perish, but I live forever." The old woman looked at Lin Feng and asked, "You want it?" "Yes," Lin Feng said. He didn't feel awkward at all. He wanted this item anyway. However, this did not belong to Lin Feng. It belonged to Bai Suxin, or rather, they belonged to their lineage. "All right, promise me one thing, and I'll give you this green stone tablet," the old woman said. Bai Suxin was shocked. The Dead Souls Island was destroyed because of this item. Now, the old woman was willing to give it away. She couldn't understand this. However, Bai Suxin didn't say anything else. She knew that the old woman must have her reasons for doing so. "What is it?" Lin Feng asked. "Marry her." The old woman pointed at Bai Suxin and said, "What?" Lin Feng was dumbfounded. He thought he had misheard. "Senior," Bai Suxin looked at the old woman in disbelief. She really couldn't understand why the old woman would make such a request. Cough, cough. Lin Feng coughed dryly and said, "Well, marriage is something that requires both parties to be willing, right? After all, nothing forcibly done will be sweet." The old woman looked at Bai Suxin and said, "Child, take off your veil." Bai Suxin didn't dare to disobey the old woman, so she took off her veil, revealing a flawless face that could topple nations. She was truly beautiful and moving. "Now, let me ask you, if you marry her, I'll give you the green stone tablet as her dowry. Do you agree?" The old woman looked at Lin Feng again and asked, "Of course, there's no problem with me." Lin Feng laughed dryly. Not only did he get the green stone tablet, but He also got to marry such a beautiful woman. Lin Feng was naturally happy. This was like a pie falling from the sky. Senior, how can you decide my marriage so hastily? Besides, I don't want to get married. Bai Suxin blushed. She was speaking from the bottom of her heart. Bai Suxin really didn't want to get married. She only wanted to silently protect her clansmen. The old woman said, "Child, come with me. I have something to say to you in private." Bai Suxin nodded. Bai Suxin followed the old woman. Lin Feng waited in place. He couldn't help but mutter to himself. He didn't know what the old woman would say to Bai Suxin, but he felt that it should be about the marriage. Before long, the old woman and Bai Suxin returned. The old woman looked at Lin Feng and said, "She has agreed." Lin Feng glanced at Bai Suxin and saw that she was blushing. She looked so beautiful that he couldn't imagine what would happen to her. Lin Feng said, "However, it's obvious that there's a price to pay for this. I want to know what the price is." The old woman said, "Protecting my clan is the same as protecting your own clan. No matter what difficulties you encounter, you must not abandon them. Can you do that?" Lin Feng was slightly surprised. He hadn't expected the old woman to raise such a condition. However, Lin Feng quickly understood some of the reasoning behind it. The Armageddon War was about to arrive. The old woman's words seemed to be a farewell. In other words, the heavy responsibility of protecting their clan fell on Bai Suxin. But what about Bai Suxin? Could Bai Suxin really protect their clan? The old woman clearly didn't have any confidence in Bai Suxin. Perhaps even Bai Suxin didn't have much confidence in him. Thus, the old woman thought of himself. A powerful existence like the old woman would definitely be able to see how extraordinary his background was. If he tied their clan to him, he would be able to soar into the sky. At that time, if he could soar into the 9 heavens, his clan would be protected, and perhaps they would not be exterminated. Lin Feng said, "I agree, Senior. All right, I'll be your witness. Now bow to the heavens and earth." The old woman said. In any case, Lin Feng's face was thick enough. Naturally, there was no problem. Although Bai Suxin agreed to marry Lin Feng, she was still very shy when it came to it. However, Bai Suxin quickly adjusted her emotions. Under the old woman's witness, she bowed to the heaven and earth with Lin Feng. "Wife," Lin Feng called out. He was very happy in his heart. He actually had such a beautiful wife. He could even wake up from his sleep with a smile. "Hubby," Bai Suxin blushed and bowed to Lin Feng. Lin Feng helped Bai Suxin up. He accidentally touched Bai Suxin's hand and felt that Bai Suxin's skin was as smooth as silk. He could feel it. It was extremely comfortable. "I hope you two can love each other," the old woman said. Then she walked into the distance and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye.